Good afternoon and welcome to the EcoSolar Home Tour. My name is Andrew Mills and today I'll be your host for today's tour. This is day 2 of the Calgary homes for the EcoSolar Tour. We have 5 homes today and we're very pleased to be able to show them to you today. So thank you and welcome to everyone who's joining us now. People are joining in the background, I can see that. This is our first virtual tour for the EcoSolar Home Tour, and we want to thank all of our homeowners, everybody who has helped us put this together, who's volunteered their homes to be part of this tour, helped us put together videos and other content. We really want to thank everyone for helping out. I also want to thank our Zoom helpers today. I want to thank our concierge, Lee Bond, who is helping the homeowners get set up and ready to present during today. I want to thank our quizmaster, Gordon Howell, who is taking questions and bringing those up at the end of during each session. Chat help today is Adrian Ebsary, who is helping us and helping you. If you have a concern or you need some help, send a chat to the chat help person. Visitor services today is Shane Fraser. He's going to help keep track of the numbers of people. And social media today is Kevin Brown. Kevin Brown is tracking Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. And if any questions come in through those media, he will be relaying them to the meeting for us. My name's Andrew Mills. I am the president of the EcoSolar Home Tour Society of Alberta. The EcoSolar Home Tour Society of Alberta is organized to put together tours of energy efficient and solar homes in the province. We've been at this for 20 years. And this is our second year showing Calgary homes, and this will be our first year showing Lethbridge homes. The Lethbridge tour will be next weekend. I want to thank our sponsors. Our silver sponsors in Calgary are 4 Elements, and they do energy assessments and other work to help you build energy efficient homes. Innotech Windows and Doors out of Vancouver, they make European style tilt and turn windows made in Canada. We have Skyfire Energy, who is a solar installer based in the Calgary area, but they also do work across the province. The City of Calgary is a sponsor, and we thank the City of Calgary for their support. And then the Solar Club. The Solar Club is an association of retail energy providers that provide an advantageous solar rate for summer production. And we'll probably hear more about that through the tour today as we have some people who are taking advantage of their service. So our online tour today has a couple of things. We're going to have 40 minutes for each home. Basically, we'll be starting with a presentation on the home. In some cases, we have a video interview that's been prepared that we will be able to show you. Those video interviews are all posted already at our ecosolar.ca website, and you can go to that website to review those videos if you'd like to look at them in more detail later. There are other presentations today that will be live. We have a couple of those today, and basically it'll be a PowerPoint, and the homeowner will talk to the slides as they go by. Then after the introduction, we'll have time for questions. You need to send your questions by chat to # Quizmaster. You will have access to the chat to send it to the co-hosts in our meeting, including Quizmaster. And you can also ask questions by email to info@ecosolar.ca. If you're on Facebook or YouTube or any of the other social media that's out there, you can ask questions that way. If you are on YouTube and you'd like to get your question answered quickly, send it to info@ecosolar.ca, and our Quizmaster will be monitoring that. You can also send us questions to info@ecosolar.ca if you have a question that doesn't get answered during our meeting today. We will be addressing all questions that come in that way, and it may take us a bit of time to respond to some of them, so we would email you back with your answers later. Now, I'll just mention today that for security reasons, all participants except for the homeowners and the volunteers will normally be muted and will normally have their videos turned off. There are people who like to disrupt these kind of meetings, and we are doing everything we can to keep them out of our meetings. So for that, we need to keep videos off and people muted. So please use the chat to send your questions to the Quizmaster. Well, we're going to start now with a presentation that has been prepared by our volunteer and super Zoom person, Shane Fraser. And in his day job, he works for EPCOR in Edmonton, doing microgen agreements with people who are trying to get solar on their homes. And he's prepared a short presentation here on applying to be a microgenerator. And we'd like Shane to go over that today, spend a few minutes to go over that today. Shane, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for the introduction and opportunity to participate today. I am the manager of customer engineering at EPCOR Distribution and Transmission in Edmonton, and a bit of a solar Africa aficionado myself. I'm going to be talking about how you can apply to be a microgenerator. This process is applicable not just to EPCOR, but across the province of Alberta. Andrew, if you could maybe take us to the next slide there.
Too far.
So yes, this is a 6-step process that breaks down kind of the key steps that you need to know as the homeowner. And the first step that I've got here is obtaining your past consumption data. In the province of Alberta, the microgen regulation allows the homeowner to install as much solar as they need to supply an their annual energy consumption. So this, for the average homeowner, looks like about 7,200 kilowatt hours a year, which works out to about 6 kilowatts of solar. But to know exactly how much you can put on your home, you need to know how much you use. One way to do this is gather your past electrical bills. Not everybody keeps all of their electrical bills like I do. So another alternative is to go to your energy retailer or distribution utility company. You can reach out to them, or you can get your installer or one of your prospective installers to reach out to them to gather this information. If you're going to have more than one installer that you're looking at to potentially install solar on your roof, what I suggest is asking one of them to get this information and then have them share that information with you, and then you can pass it along to the other installers. The next step after you have your information about your consumption is to interview different installers. I suggest getting at least 3 quotes. I know I got 3 quotes myself. And this way, you know you're getting a fair price for the installation for your property. It also lets you see different perspectives of installations. I know in my case, I had some differences I got from, let's say, installer B and C that I asked installer A, who I went with, to incorporate into their design. The prospective installer should help you identify your needs, wants, and goals. One of my goals in the future is to have a net zero home, and it's also to have EV powered by solar. So I had additional provisions put into my system, some extra cables run, some the layout done so I could add additional solar with ease in the future. And that way I can, as I expand my consumption, can expand my system to match. They should discuss their process with you. Everybody's a little bit different. They should discuss the layout and configuration and why they're doing what they're doing. You're going to need to examine your home's roof structure, make sure it's sufficient to support the solar. You think that most cases it is, 99% of the cases. My house, not so much. I had to do structural bolstering. The roof condition, make sure that the shingles are in good condition and that the electrical systems in the home are capable of handling your goals and the solar PV system you're installing. They also should review any rebates, and I'm going to go over that at the end because there's some really great rebates and grants that may be available to you. And they should answer all your questions, give you a written quote and a written timeline. And I really, everybody gets a written quote, but not everybody gets a written timeline. And I think a lot of people are surprised at how long the process can take. So that's valuable. Now we get on to the third step and the most important step, selecting who you're going to go with, who's going to be your installer. It should be somebody you're comfortable working with, and the cheapest option is not always the best. If they're missing things, there might be add-ons, there might be delays, there might be frustrations. So make sure you really look through it all, but don't be tricked by just low cost, because that might be a painful process and might actually cost you more in the end. And then you're going to sign the contract and pay any deposits required. So then we're going to go on to step 4. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. So applications and permits. This is going to be done by your installer, or it should be. If the installer is not getting you permits and not talking about permits, you should be asking them about what the plan is and when they're going to get it. They should take care of all that for you. They're going to apply to the municipality and they're going to apply to the utility, and they're going to give them the information that those entities need to determine if your solar panel system is going to be sized correctly and configured correctly for where you live and the power grid you're connected to. A common mistake we see is builders will sometimes start installing the system prior to getting approvals from the municipality or the utility, only to find out that they require changes and for work to be undone and redone. It's never good. It causes delays and causes extra expense and frustrations. So I always encourage you to get your permits in order before you start building, which is the next step, number 5. Start building your system. You may need to do some inspections before others. I know in my case, I had to get like I said, the structural bolstering done. It had to be inspected. Luckily, I was the structural engineer who did it and designed it, so I was able to inspect it myself. But that had to be signed off before I was able to put the solar panels on the roof, and then I had to get the solar panels inspected later. Again, that brings us to the next step, which is the inspections and commissioning. This is great because the city is going to send out an inspector to your home and look at your solar panels, make sure they're installed properly and compliant with the permits. This is a great opportunity to get a second set of eyes on the work done. You paid a lot of money for good quality work, and even the best person sometimes makes mistakes. So this second set of eyes will help catch those mistakes and make sure things are installed correctly and that you're getting the product that you're paying for. It's also important for the safety of your home. Electricity can be dangerous if not installed correctly, and you want to make sure you and your family are safe. So this also have some commissioning work done. They should, if there's an app that you're going to be able to view your solar panel production on, like I have with my inverter, they'll also set that all up for you. So some key information sources, which is our next slide, that it's good to know about. Sorry, let's see, there it is. Okay, municipalities. So I've provided links here to the municipal websites for Edmonton and Calgary. So you can go to these sites and learn about what the municipal requirements are, and the 4 distribution utilities. And for our folks today on the Calgary tour, that's going to be NMAX. So these are great sites to learn about what's going to be required and learn some of the details of what's required. Next slide, please. So, well, we wait for that next slide to come up. Yeah, there it is. The microgen regulation is what governs everything. It's the rules that everybody's held to. It tells the AUC, the Alberta Utilities Commission, what to do, the utilities and the public. So if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, you can always view that. AUC Rule 24 just adds additional details on top of the regulation. And I really recommend this AUC Microgen Notice Submission Guideline. It's a fantastic document that's been compiled by the AUC in conjunctions with utilities and with feedback from customers and installers to answer some of the small and big questions that come up throughout the microgen process. And I'll be posting a link to that in the chat. Should be popping up any second now. And if you want some really fine details on this, it's a great place to go. Now, our last slide, and possibly the most fun one out of them all, is going to be on our growth and rebates. So unfortunately, I didn't show the growth here because growth is specific to Edmonton, but the rebates, the first rebate specific to Edmonton, but the second rebate is the federal government rebate. The federal government is now offering $1,000 per kilowatt of solar installed as part of their Canada Greener Home initiatives. This initiative caps out at $5,000, but can be a substantial reduction in the cost of putting solar on your home. So it's something that's worth looking at. And you know, they always say with these rebates, they don't always last forever. So you know, this might be a good summer to consider putting solar on your house. And with that, I thank you for your time and pass it back to Andrew. Thank you, Andrew.
Well, thank you, Shane. Thank you for that introduction on how we would put solar on our homes for those that don't have it yet. Just a reminder that when we are in the question period today, we'd like you to send your questions through the chat to the Quizmaster, #sign Quizmaster, make it easier to find him in the chat. And then you can also ask questions by email to info@ecosolar.ca that we will answer after the meeting. That email address is in place permanently, so even after the meeting, we'll be able to answer your questions. Now, again, participants will normally be muted and videos will normally be off, so don't try to turn them on. They probably won't work. Now, we're here today to listen to the experiences of the homeowners. So we're going to keep everybody muted through this. Remember that even using your chat, we're looking for people to address everyone respectfully. We've been having to remove people who are coming in and not being respectful, so please remember that this is meant to be a respectful meeting and everyone should be kind to everyone, please. We're also not here to criticize homeowners' experiences. We've asked these homeowners to put their homes on the tour and volunteer their homes, and it's not up for debate. This is what they've done. This is what they are showing. This is their experience. And we're here to listen to that experience and not criticize that experience. We're also not here to criticize the technologies presented. There may be technologies presented that you don't agree with. There may be technologies presented that you think are not being done properly. That's not for us to criticize today. We're here to see what the homeowners have to say about these technologies. We're here to see what the homeowners thought about how their research went and how the implementation of their research brought them to where they are today. We're also not here to distract the conversation away from the tour. So anybody that's looking to distract this conversation or disrupt this meeting will be removed immediately and without question and without appeal. Following these guidelines is up to us, and if people are not playing by the rules, we'll remove them from the meeting without any warning. So let's move on to the tour. In 3 minutes, we are going to start with the Huntington Solar home, so that will be coming up in a few minutes. We also have today a home in Montgomery, which is near NetZero, very interesting home. And then after that, another home in Montgomery, and this is a home that meets the passive house standard. So we'll be looking at that today. And that particular homeowner has an excellent review and details on how the passive house standard works. And we did have some discussion yesterday of a home that's being built to some of the passive house standards, but we will get more details when we talk about the Montgomery passive house. Then we're going to look at the Ramsay garage suite. This has been on our tour before, and it's a very interesting net positive suite that has thermal solar and solar thermal and solar photovoltaics. And that's a very interesting one. And then finally, today we'll be talking about the Southland solar home. This is a home where the homeowner has recently put some solar on his home. He's done a few upgrades, and he is very keen on electric vehicles. So he'll be showing us his electric vehicle and how he was able to integrate his solar collection to work with his electric vehicles. So in just a minute, we will start on the Huntington Solar, but that's our schedule. As I said, once during the interview portion of this, the presentation portion of this, you can send your questions to chat help, and at the end of this, we will go from there. Now, so the first home that we're going to have up here is Huntington Solar. We'll be talking with the homeowner, Bob Hawksworth, when the video is done. But we have a video, an interview with Bob to start this off. And here is the video. And I'm going to start this video. It'll play for a few minutes. This will introduce the home, and then we'll bring Bob on to answer questions after that. So let's start the video. Hi there, and welcome to the EcoSolar Home Tour. My name's Andrew Mills, and today we'll be talking about a solar-heated and solar-powered home in the Huntington Hills neighborhood in Calgary. With me today is Bob Hawksworth, who's the homeowner. Welcome to the EcoSolar Home Tour, Bob.
Hi, Andrew. Good to be with you. Thanks for this opportunity.
That's great. Bob, your home is an example of an energy-efficient home that features solar hot water heating, solar electricity generation, and an upgrade to your home's insulation. Give me a bit of background on why you chose to update your home like this. What were the main things you were trying to accomplish?
Well, my main motivation, Andrew, is that I'm worried about my impact on the environment. In fact, the impact all of us are having on the environment. As you know, when we burn fossil fuels, they give off carbon dioxide that traps heat in our atmosphere, and there's now so much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it's actually changing our climate. We have to stop this and do something about it. So basically, I wanted to see how much I could reduce my use of fossil fuels and lower the amount of heat that I need to warm my house and the electricity I need to power my home.
Okay, so let's start with your EnerGuide. What's the EnerGuide rating of your home?
Well, I don't have a current one. I did have at one point that said it was, after having made some renovations, that it was 79. I think that might have been an old system that was being used. I've since made some other changes and added power production, but I haven't had an updated EnerGuide rating done or a door blower test, so I don't have a current number for you.
79 out of 100 under the old EnerGuide system is typical of a new home. So you're doing fairly well with your current upgrades. So that's great. Let's talk about some of the pictures of your home now. So first of all, what would you say is the standout feature of your home?
Oh, standout feature. Well, there's an accessory building in my backyard. I'll show you some pictures in a bit about under construction, but essentially it's a state-of-the-art roofing system that uses solar panels to provide the envelope for the roof instead of shingles, and it turns the building into a little mini power plant.
That's very cute. When we build energy efficient homes, we make a series of energy efficient choices. What were the main choices that you made as far as energy efficiency in your home?
Well, Andrew, as you well know, energy efficiency starts with good insulation. Improving insulation makes all the other decisions and choices easier and cheaper. So first, I insulated the attic. It's now R50, and the basement, since I moved into this house in the mid-'80s, had never been insulated. So after having lived with it for many years, I tore out the basement development that was there since I purchased the home and put in a 5-inch foam insulation, which basically brought it up to R30. And then I renovated the basement after that. The home also has triple pane windows and those front and back doors have built-in blinds that also add insulation to the house.
Okay. So what about your mechanical systems?
Well, as part of before the renovations, just were underway, I installed a heat exchange ventilator, and it went in before the walls were drywalled and the ceiling installed.
I see it just in the left of the picture in the back, just underneath where your hand is. That's the heat recovery ventilator there?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right, and then lighting, appliances, things like that?
Well, I changed out all the incandescent bulbs and added LEDs. This was several years ago when LEDs were just starting to make their way into the marketplace.
You also have active solar heating, I understand. What can you show us about that?
Well, in doing the basement renovations, I pre-plumbed the basement to be ready for solar heating, and there are 3 radiators that I installed at floor level. And then after the renovation was complete, Simple Solar installed their solar thermal system on the roof and connected the water pipes. What's most visible from the street at my house is a solar thermal collector on the roof. And you can also see the water tank in the basement that connects the roof to the radiators on the floor.
Okay, I think there's another slide there.
Yeah, oh yes, okay, well let me, good. The guts of the system is a glycol, pumping system. So glycol goes from the basement up to the collector on the roof, and there it picks up heat and brings it down into a heat exchanger that sits in that water tank I showed you in the basement. When the heated water in the tank gets above 50 degrees Celsius, a valve, a hydronic valve, you can see it right there, automatically opens and circulates the water into the radiators to heat the house.
Interesting. Another important area is water saving costs. Any features of your home that help you save water?
Yes, we have low flow toilets in the house as well.
I see. Okay, what other unique features on your home do you want to show us? And I think you were going to talk about this garden studio.
Yes, well, the accessory garden studio was constructed with walls made with magnesium oxide cement. It's fireproof, waterproof, pest-proof, very durable, long-lasting, and it's a building component system from MGO Systems here in Calgary. You can see it being erected, and then once it was up, we put the frames down to mount the solar array.
Yeah, so those frames actually attach right to the roof, and then they're actually waterproof, are they not? Once you put the solar module on top of that, they actually create a waterproof surface. That's very interesting. I think you have some additional slides of this. There we go.
Well, this is what the garden studio looks like when it's complete. It's very beautifully finished and multifunctional.
So those are pre-insulated panels that go up all together?
That's correct. Yes, they are.
Okay.
So they have a very high insulation value, and I should also say that as part of the renovations, I wanted to add solar panels to an existing garden shed to see how that new framing system could be installed alongside shingles. So there you can sort of see it under construction.
So essentially, you were acting as the prototype in Canada for this new solar roofing system.
That's correct, Andrew. Yes, it is.
Okay. So what were the key costs that you came up with in renovating your efficient home? Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, I think certainly the biggest costs were installing the solar hot water and the solar electrical powers arrays. These went in 2014, and costs have dropped a great deal since I put up the first solar PV array. I did an analysis a couple of years ago. I estimated that my reduced costs compared to what I invested were probably giving me about 5% per year. And I didn't get any rebates for any of my project costs. So since putting in the solar systems, a carbon tax on natural gas has been brought in. My solar hot water system reduces the amount of natural gas I'd otherwise use. So the more natural gas I avoid using, the more carbon tax I also avoid paying. So since I did my analysis, the carbon tax has gone up, and so my cost avoidance has gone up as well. I guess I could perhaps suggest that my return on investment might be as high as 6%. It's not a blow out the door rate of return, but it's better than I would have earned if I kept my money in a term deposit at the bank.
That's definitely true. So is there anything that you would have done differently in the upgrades to your home?
Well, the next big step would be to put more insulation in the outer walls. The drawback from doing that is that it would mean I'd have to remove and replace the siding as well. So that's what's held me back from making that move.
It's a big job. So I understand. So what aspect of your home would you say is the most satisfying to complete?
Well, I think I get the most satisfaction from having installed the CHP Power building integrated solar system on this garden shed. As I mentioned, it eliminates the need for shingles, and the frames go directly on the roof, turning it into a little power plant. I don't have to worry about removing the solar system when the shingles have to be replaced. By using solar modules themselves instead of shingles, I'm really not worried about the longevity of the roof. It's going to be there for years, probably.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with the way it looks. It's kind of cool, and
it is.
And futuristic looking.
Very nice. So is there anybody you'd like to thank who helped you design or construct your home?
Yes, well, I think the CHE Power provided a roofing solution. MGO Systems built the building, and Simple Solar provided the hot water system, and they also put the PV system on my roof. My good friend Mark Bruni was the manager of my renovation project back in 2014.
Very interesting that you're able to get involved in that prototype. That's a very interesting looking system. So thank you very much, Bob, for joining me today and sharing pictures of your home. Okay, we'll just stop there, and we will get ready for some questions with Bob. Gordon, do we have any questions for Bob yet?
We do, actually. One of the questions is how it was really lovely seeing your house, Bob, with the insulation and the renovation of the basement and the solar thermal, solar PV, and that remarkable new integrated PV roofing system. Comfort levels in the basement after you insulated it. It's remarkable that it hadn't been insulated before. As well as energy savings, how did your basement comfort change?
Well, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, it's it made a world of difference. Yeah, I would say that would be a great big benefit from having insulated the basement instead of cold feet and shivering and having to go put on another sweater and going upstairs to turn up the thermostat. You can sit in comfort and watch a movie or read a book or do whatever we might be doing down the basement.
Now, let me ask you a bit about these. So I've got the picture of the radiators here. These are connected to your solar thermal system, and these radiators, are they just in the basement, or did you connect the solar thermal to other heat radiators in your home?
No, these are just in the basement, Andrew.
Okay.
So it operates kind of like those old gravity furnaces years and years and years ago, where, you know, the heat is generated and then slowly the heat rises and warms up the house at the later as time goes on. So what we'd find here in this house on a sunny day like today, for example, is that the heat from these radiators would start to come up through the basement to the house into mid-afternoon, into evening. So it's a supplementary heating source. It's not primary. It's it's gentle and permeates the house over the course of the afternoon into the evening.
But you also end up with a warm basement, so it's not a bad thing.
And that's right. And with the insulation in the walls, it makes the basement very pleasant.
How did you find that your use of the basement changed?
Well, it just is much more comfortable, and not constantly going upstairs to turn up the thermostat because we're shivering in the basement. It's actually, I think, has had an impact on reducing the amount of furnace heat that we're using in the house.
Yeah, we're getting some more questions coming in, which I appreciate. So if anybody has any questions, do send them to me. And my address is the # and then Quizmaster.
So, Bob, I'm going to break in here again. And recently, like just this week, you sent me some additional pictures about this building integrated solar. Maybe we should just go through that. So let me just change to this other set of slides here. And basically, you were the prototype. Your garden shed and your garden studio were prototypes for this surface mount solar racking system that's coming from Europe. And you were working with a company, I think is CHE Power. Is that correct?
That's correct, Andrew. Yes. Yeah.
All right. So here's a few pictures. So here is your garden shed. So I'll click through these and maybe you explain them to the people as we go.
Yeah, well, we built 100 square foot in the city of Calgary. Most municipalities, you can build an accessory building under 10 square meters without a building permit. And so we thought, well, let's see what we could do with a configuration of that size. What sort of roof, what angle, how many solar panels. In this case, we can put 6 for 100 square foot or 10 square meter building. It's partial electrical requirements. And the frames go down, as you can see on the subroof, and then the solar panels themselves go into those frames. The frames manage the water, so any rain comes, flows over the panels and down into the eaves, and it's a waterproof system. Solar panels were engineered to last 30 to 40 years. So as far as endurance, the frames and the solar panels will provide a roofing solution to that building for probably the next 25 or 30 years.
Yeah, so these are all pictures of the shed of the
Yes.
sorry, the garden studio. So here's the edge. So this is and then I have this close-up picture. So this is the gutter between the solar modules, and so basically the plastic frames are creating a water channel between the solar modules, so that when the water flows, it gets into this channel and then runs off the roof. Now before the roof is put, before these solar frames are screwed to the roof, there is a waterproof membrane added first. So that's the backup, I believe.
It's belts and braces, yes. It's titanium underlayment that we use just as further protection and further, I guess.
Yeah, so titanium is a brand name for a peel and stick waterproof roofing membrane.
Further confidence that that the roof will be protected from water.
So here's an exploded view of the frame. So Bob, do you want to mention a few things about this?
Well, without kind of going into all the details with how it's attached to the roof, there's no roof penetration with those connectors. And we put six per frame just to make sure that there's no, the pressure and the loading and the wind, all those elements that engineers are concerned about. Those are all meet specifications of the National Building Code and other requirements for the roof. We meet all those requirements, and then you can just see from the frame that the solar panels fit in. Standard solar panels, you can, whichever manufacturer you want to use, can slide in and be accommodated in those frames.
Now, these frames have been used in Europe for a number of years, so I assume that they've been tested, that they provide sufficient ventilation underneath the solar modules to provide cooling.
Yes, and I just note that by the end of this month or into early July, we will have our full CSA certification, but we've
Very good.
Yeah, we've been relying on the UL and the European certification and engineers providing certification for the projects, the prototypes that we've installed so far.
Now, there was another home that was supposed to be on the tour, but we didn't quite get it done in time, and that was going to be Queensland Solar. And so I have a few pictures of this. It's a little bit further along, but it's still not done. So we have a few pictures we can show of that. So I believe this was the design for that. Not quite exactly what it turned out to be, but pretty close.
Yeah, it's again.
And then here's the actual garage.
Right, and here again, we're trying to think of ways in which we can put together kits that standardized. If someone wants a 20 by 20 garage or a 20 by 24 garage, we can specify how that roof could be put on a slant and completely covered with solar panels. So in this case, this homeowner is gone with our system, and the roof is oriented towards the south. It's at a fairly steep angle to get maximum solar gain from the installation. The panels, the frames themselves have been installed. We were waiting for a development permit and a building permit to be approved, which have just been completed, and we just didn't get around to getting the solar panels themselves installed on the roof in time to show for the tour. Hopefully next year this will be all completed and ready to demonstrate. So there you can see how the clips and the connectors, there's the titanium underlayment, and the frames are already in place for the panels to pop in.
Yeah, so I can see there's a little bit of there's some angles to the channel on the top of the module. So when rainwater gets in, it drains off to the sides very quickly. Very interesting. And then I think we have one or two more pictures here. Yes, here's a completed one. Where is this?
This is a home in Patterson Heights in Calgary. It was specified about a year ago, so it's another example of our system. In this case, a portion of the roof was used for solar production, and you can see how the shingling can be integrated with the portion of the roof that are covered with panels. In contrast with the garage we just saw, we tried to design that garage in a way that the entire roof itself could be covered by solar panels.
And then I think I have a last picture here. There's a little bit stepping back from the home a bit.
Yeah. So that's now been, the house has been completed, and
Well, very
I'll leave that
interesting.
to
So,
Ms.
so
Gallagher.
you've been helping out. You've been helping out with this group, and first of all, letting them build a prototype in your backyard, which is a lot of fun. Lots of good experimentation there, and then moving on to some of these larger projects. That's very interesting. Okay, Gordon, I'm going to throw it back over to you, and any questions that have come up in the last couple of minutes.
Yes,
We
thank
have,
you so much.
we have about 15 minutes left, so.
Thank you so much for that time check. Yes, we have about 15 questions. People have been actively sending them to me at Quizmaster. The triple glazed windows that you put in, do they reduce hot spots or cold spots in your living space during the winter?
To some extent they do, yes. I think part of the problem with, with 1971 suburban home is that the insulation at that time is not what I would like it to be today. So these windows by themselves are helpful and good, but fundamentally what really I need to do with this house to bring it up to the standard that I'd like it to be is to really insulate those walls. And so you'd have the whole elevation of the building would be well insulated, and the windows would be not doing the job all by themselves, but
Yes.
the walls would be doing it too.
Yes, thank you. We do have lots of questions about the integrated roofing system also. Now with this picture here, we just see the solar thermal collectors.
Right.
What tilt angle are they at?
Oh, I'm guessing whatever 51 degrees or something, whatever is the
Okay.
maximum to get southern exposure.
I actually know that. They're at 63 degrees.
Oh, 63. Okay, yeah. Very good.
So a latitude plus a bit.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
for space heating, it needs to be higher than not optimal for annual.
Okay.
Okay, that's a really good picture. Thank you for showing that. So a number of questions then. Can you show the framing system? Just 3 sides to the right, Andrew. Right there, yes. So my understanding from what you're describing to us, Bob, is that this framing system allows a standard solar module to be integrated into the roof structure without using shingles.
Right, that's correct.
But so can you use any kind of solar module, larger or smaller, or is it restricted to a certain specific size?
It's the standard of, I don't have the numbers in front of me at the moment, but it's a standard solar panel. It doesn't matter. The manufacturers you can pick the manufacturer you want.
Because standard solar modules for houses typically come in 60 cell sizes, and for commercial come in 72, but a lot of people are using 72 cell modules in their houses too, which have an extra 2 rows of cells on them, and so they are typically 2 meters and now even approaching 2.1 meters, whereas the 60 cell modules are more like 1.7 meters or so. So
yeah.
There was some questions on whether they'll accommodate the larger and the smaller modules.
I think it would be the 60 cells. It's about a 320 kilowatts per panel.
320 watts per module. Okay.
Yes, right.
Thank you. And that is, you mentioned CHE. Is that the manufacturer of the frames, or is that the distributor?
That's the distributor in Canada. The manufacturer, yeah.
Who's the manufacturer?
IRFTS in France.
IRFTS?
In France, yes. That's and we have the exclusive distribution for that product in Canada.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. And so if somebody was wanting this, they could go to CHE in Calgary?
Yes, chepower.ca. Yeah.
Okay,
Just think Canadian Home Energy.
Canadian Home Energy, okay.
Just think
And I
of,
see,
just use CHE. That's the company name. But if you're wondering where CHE came from, that was a
thank you,
genesis of the
thank
name.
you. I see that our visitor services person has kindly put 2 links on our chat line so that people can find the website for chepower.ca and en.irfts.com for the other one. So based on what you're saying, I'm just synthesizing some of the other questions here. So again, the structure needs to be designed in terms of the roof in terms of this question. What is the cost per square meter? Do you know of something like this?
I think we're quoting somewhere around $1.50 to $1.60 per watt install. Somewhere in that order, just general order of magnitude.
Yeah, so $1.50 a watt.
$1.50, 60 somewhere.
Okay, so fine, $1.60 per watt installed, and that includes just the frame and the solar modules attached to them.
Generally, we probably include, depending on what the homeowner needs, because you need an installer, and there's lots of the application to be made for the generation permit and
Sure.
the electrical, and it has to be installed and linked.
Sure.
So it's generally we work with a homeowner to find out what they need, and I'm just saying that our projects are coming in at about that range. So
but does that include the inverters?
Yes.
So it's a complete system other than the permits?
Yeah.
Will this work with microinverters too, or just with string inverter based systems?
Either one. We've installed both.
Great. Roughly how many projects have been done in Calgary so far?
1, 2, 3. I think we're on our 4th or 5th project in Calgary.
Okay, thank you. Have you done a retrofit project or just new ones?
Both. And that's why we showed both in my backyard. We've done a retrofit in North Vancouver. We've got a new construction here on this Patterson Heights home. This works best. Our system really works best for homeowners who are either building new or the roof has come to the end of its life expectancy and they need to replace the shingles. This would be the ideal time to specify our system, because you don't have to put the shingles on and then put racks down and then put the solar. You just take off the shingles, put down our system, and shingle around it. So it eliminates some of the costs of your other roofing materials.
Yeah.
In places. So that's an additional benefit and value of this system.
I really appreciate you saying that, because I need to re-roof my house and put on a PV system that's 10 times larger than mine that is on my house already. So
we'll be happy to talk with you.
Yeah, I'll be looking into this. Thank you. There were some questions about how it integrates into, or the types of materials that it integrates into, like standard asphalt shingles, I would imagine. How about rubber shingles or cedar shakes?
Any of them. It can be done with any of them.
Okay.
It just, what you're doing is the roof, on the subroof, you're putting on our system and then you're shingling around it, or whatever your roofing material is done around it. Because where the solar modules go, that becomes your roofing material. It's turning solar modules into a roofing material. It's really what it's
Yes.
doing. And so what you do with the rest of the roof, we can work with anything.
Right. Thank you. How about metal roofing systems?
Yes, we're looking at, yes, it'll work with metal roofing systems. And I'll just mention that IRFTS is developing a metal framing system that we're now looking at as well, as the next generation of this framing system. So it all works together, can all be integrated.
So the picture we saw of the exploded framing system there,
Yep.
that would then become metal rather than a type
Right.
of rubber or plastic.
Right, plastic, right.
This is plastic.
It's polypropylene.
And then, okay, thank you. So then we see the clips there. So those would be the clips that the solar modules then are connected to, and then that
Right.
goes into the roof substrate.
Right, and this is, but the roof, there's no penetration into the roof membrane itself. So the system it's a system that integrates for the whole roof, and the frames are connected with those connectors, as you see, 6 per module.
How does
what else I can tell you about them?
How does this system attach to the roof?
Well, it's part of our it's part of our IP, I guess you would call it. We have our folks, that was why we built the 2 prototypes in the backyard, was to get trained on how to use this system, how it's installed. I don't know whether you can see from those earlier photos, Andrew, where we had the 2 guys on the roof, and whether you could see from that how the connections were made. That goes way back early into the presentation.
The one just before that, Andrew.
Building the solar.
I don't have that picture. I'm sorry.
Okay.
What I do is I have this close up of the roof, and you can see these tracks here. So these tracks, these are the 1, 2, and then there's a 3rd bolt, and those 3 tracks are screwing into these metal fasteners.
Oh yeah.
Right. So that's what. So there's a track that's running over that. So that this track is actually covered with a flashing.
Yeah, so
Let's go back here. No, I don't have that picture, Bob, of the fellow standing on the roof.
I have another question that has just come in. The pictures seem to show PV arrays almost as squares. Can you stagger the edge of the PV arrays to accommodate non-rectangular roofs? Or can you mix placing the solar modules in portrait and landscape?
Yeah, we could do portrait and landscape. We'd prefer to do all one or the other.
Yeah.
And in this case, we did landscape, and then on the garden studio, we did portrait. And that's coming.
Let me throw that question back. The actual tracks on the racking system need to line up to drain the water. So no, you can't stagger them. So they do have, those tracks will need to be lined up vertically. You wouldn't be able to offset them by half, I don't think.
Right, that's reasonable.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that, Andrew.
I think that was the question actually. Whereas on this Patricia house, you can see that they're actually staggered off to the right here. So they're offset a little bit, but where they're lined up above each other, the tracks would need to line up in order to do the thing. Now, guys, I'm sorry, I've lost track of time, and I need to get ready for the next presentation.
Thanks, everyone. This has been very
This was
engaging.
so interesting.
And Andrew, thank you for doing this, and Gordon and your volunteers. This is an awesome initiative, this solar home tour. Thank you.
I'll just be a minute. I just have to call up the next presentation, and then we will get going. It's 1 o'clock.
It's certainly a lot of interest in the.
Yeah, that is an interesting design.
Okay,
Our next home today is going to be the Montgomery near NetZero home, and we have Christina who is going to be presenting it for us. And I just need to get the presentation up, and I'm having, there it comes. Just give me a second, and I'll pull that up, open that, and then we'll get going. Just put this one away, bring this up, and we'll start. And okay, Christina, are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Just give me a second to bring your presentation up here. And good, away we go. Can you see that?
Yep. Do I just tell you to next slide when I'm ready?
Yes, that's what you do.
Okay. So I'm on?
You're on.
Okay, awesome. Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining me today for my presentation about our house. This is our little house in Montgomery in Calgary, and it's kind of obscured a bit by the graphics there, but this aerial shot shows you, I guess, one of the main solar features being the PV and solar thermal systems on the roof. And so I'm just going to walk you through a lot of the design that we incorporated into our house. And when my partner and I set out to build this house, it was the idea to build, I call it the pretty good house. We didn't really seek any major certifications, or we did EnerGuide, and that was about it. So we didn't do anything extraordinary with our house except focus on efficiency, simplicity, and I guess power generation as well. So we added the original house that we had just the solar, the PV on the main house, and then we have since added the solar thermal just below that, and we added another couple kilowatts on the garage when we had the solar rebate when the NDP was around. So we added another, I think actually those are 330 watt panels. So it was another 2 point something. So yeah, this is another aerial shot. We have a really unusual lot. So we bought this lot in 2012. It's a triangular shaped kind of pie lot at the end of the alley, and the house is oriented kind of on a 45-degree angle to the street. And we did that because that's due south, and we wanted the panels to be south. And because we had such a weird lot, the city was okay with that. And so we actually run parallel to the alley, which runs directly north-south. And so that gives a lot of people turn their heads when they see that. So maybe we'll go to the next slide. There's another exterior shot. So the main principles that we had, we found a young couple of guys starting out their architecture business when we were looking for people to help us design the house. And we told them, we wanted a very simple house. We wanted a smaller house. We wanted something very efficient. And we did a lot of research on our own as the homeowners, but we're really involved in the design process as well. The pitch of the roof is 45 degrees on purpose to kind of maximize our production due to our latitude. This you see on the left here is one of the main windows in the on the south side of the house. So what we tried to do was to have passive heating and cooling, and these shrouds were kind of more of a design thing than anything, but the windows are inset a little bit. And in the summer, we get almost no sun in the house, and in the winter, we get full sun. So oftentimes on a really hot stretch of weather, we really don't heat up that much on the main floor in particular. The upstairs can get a little bit warmer, but you know, a sustained heat wave of 30 plus degrees here, and we'll stay at a comfortable 22, 23 for the most part. And that's actually, we do tend to open the windows at night. We sort of have cross breeze. So these shrouds and the inset windows were a design feature, and I kind of call it like free. It's free. So you just have to know where to place the windows, and you know, it costs nothing. So it was one of the main design principles on the south side of the house. We'll move on. Oh, maybe I'll talk a bit about the garden on the right side. Can you go back? Oh, I'll talk about it here. So the design of the garden, we hired a permaculture company when we were designing the house as well. And we wanted we didn't want a lawn. We wanted sort of a nice space that would produce food and sort of take care of itself. It's a bit of a jungle. It kind of just grows, and all I try to do is keep the weeds out. And but these in the picture here, you see there's sort of basins that sink down below the pathway below the house, and the water from the south side of the house goes across the pathways and into these basins. So we collect that rainwater, and then we also have this cistern on the right, which collects the water on the right side or on the north side of the roof, and that we use to irrigate vegetables and whatever we can. I think the cistern, I think it's 1,100 liters, and it's got a pump in there, so we can use that. So that's been a kind of a neat feature as well, to keep the water on site and collect as much as we can to kind of irrigate the garden. And in the summer, when it gets really hot and we don't water it, and it stays green, so must be doing something right. We'll move on. So this is the interior. I wish I could say my house looked like this like all the time. It almost never looks like this. It's clean, and I have two kids, a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And in the pandemic, we've been home a lot, and so the house is generally a disaster. But this is sort of this is the main floor. And to the right, on the sort of bottom right side of the photo, is that large window facing the yard. So when you're sitting on the sofa, you sort of look into the yard. And it's one giant room. So the kitchen at the back is sort of just like, there's the island, and the back on the left is a mudroom with a door out to the back that goes up to the garage into the alley. And its kitchen is all plywood, and some built-in shelving in the living room as well. So it's a wide open space, and it's bright, it's comfortable. I mean, it's funny, when you design a house, you think of things you might have done differently. And I do love the open space, but every once in a while I do wish the kitchen was a bit more hidden away, because when it's messy, I can only ever see the mess. But that's just I guess I try to clean it, or we just deal with it. But here, probably took this photo. Yeah, this would be late afternoon. So that's looking the opposite direction towards the front door. And, we just wanted plain, simple white walls, light with the floors are oak, and just kind of a simple aesthetic. I sort of wrote in my feature sheet about sort of a more Scandinavian feel, and I think that's what we were aiming for. My mom comes from Norway, and so I think it's kind of something I come by honestly, just the bright open space and the sort of white and the wood. We'll move on. So this is our high efficiency wood stove, and this we use as kind of an accessory to our heating system, and it's really useful when we go through a major cold snap in the winter. So we burn a fair bit of wood in the winter, and then it's also really useful in the shoulder seasons when we turn off the heat and we change our rate for our retailer from a sort of a in the winter, I think we pay about 6 or 7 cents a kilowatt hour. And in the summer, we get the higher rate with our retailer, which this year is 26 cents. And so in the shoulder season, when we turn off the heat, then we, every once in a while, even in May, we were having short, quick fires in the morning sometimes if it was cool overnight and we didn't want to turn the heat on. So this is sort of an accessory to the heat, and it sort of depends on the winter how much we use it, but it pumps out a lot of heat, and it's got a secondary combustion chamber at the top, so it burns the gases as well. I know in theory they're supposed to be technically carbon neutral, but I know there's some debate about that, and we try not to burn more wood than we need to, but it is a really lovely addition. And because we're close to net zero, we don't feel as horrible about burning a little bit of wood every once in a while. So that keeps us warm and cozy in the winter. And if you're Scandinavian at all, you'll understand the concept of hygge, and that definitely gives us the cozy feel on a cold winter night. On the right there, we've got our fridge, and that was kind of an unusual choice. Most people think it's ridiculous that we have such a small fridge, but sort of one of these tall, skinny apartment fridges, and just takes up less space. The shelves are close together. It's pretty efficient compared to some of the bigger refrigerators, and we do have a deep freeze in the basement, and then every once in a while we have a little bar fridge in the basement as well that we turn on. If I do a big grocery shop, we'll just turn it on for the time that we need it, and when it clears out, we turn it off. So yeah, it gets a little crowded sometimes, especially now that we have 2 growing girls in here, but it works for the most part. So move on to the next one. So on the left here, you see our laundry area. And when we built the house, we only installed a washing machine, and the architects were adamant that we at least had to put a vent in the wall so that if someone ever bought this house, they could put a dryer in. But we only dry our clothes on the line, and I love it. And I wish more people would adopt this habit. People think, again, that we're a little bit nuts for doing this, but there's so many benefits to just line drying your clothes. Calgary, for one, is extremely dry, so clothes dry really quickly. And second, they last forever. I find that, putting clothes in the dryer, the elastics get all sort of melted and twisted and stretched out, and the fibers just don't last as long. So our clothes last forever. Other people say, well, it must take so long to hang all your clothes. And yeah, you could argue that it does take a little bit more time to hang them up compared to stuffing them in the dryer, but it's free and I kind of enjoy it. It's sort of a meditative little task every once in a while, and we can get a lot of clothes in our dryer. So we only do, 2 or 3 loads a week at the most. And we do mostly cold water washes. And yeah, so I kind of, when I was going over this with Andrew before we got started, it was sort of the idea that near net zero in our house is partially because we produce a lot of our own electricity, but also the behaviors that we choose and the habits that we choose in our house make the house closer to net zero than it would be otherwise. So if we had a dryer, it would use a lot more electricity. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning is that we're an all electric house, so we don't have a gas line. And I'll go over that when we look at some of the mechanicals, but we're fully electric. And that was a design choice as well. So this is one of the toilets in the upstairs bathroom. So we chose all as low flow fixtures as possible. I think that this one is 0.6, and I have to go check. But at the time it was the lowest flush one that we could buy for the house. And our total water consumption for our house of 4 is between 7 and 9 cubic meters a month. And the average Calgarian uses 7. So we're about a quarter of the water use that the average Calgary home of 4 people would use. And, we don't live any differently, I think, than anyone else. During the pandemic, certainly we haven't showered as often as we might have otherwise, but So we have 3 toilets in the house. There's one in the main bathroom upstairs. This is the little powder room in the main floor, and downstairs there's another one. So I think it's roughly, I want to say 0.8, but and 1.6 or something gallons per flush. So this is a drain water heat recovery system. This is in the mechanical room. So the water from the shower upstairs comes down this pipe, and as the water is being drawn into out of the tank, it's at the same flow rate being drawn through this pipe. The idea is to capture the heat in the wastewater, and it's called counterflow, and it runs at the same flow rate as when you're, oh, it's telling me my internet connection is unstable. Hopefully you can still see me. And so this is basically a way to capture the heat in the wastewater, and it puts it back in the tank, the heat. So it's basically preheating the incoming water that's being displaced by the shower that you're having. And when I was doing my master's at the University of Calgary in sustainable energy development, my final project, I did research on residential water consumption and studied this particular piece of equipment quite in depth. And it's kind of, unfortunately, but counterintuitive, because the more water you use, the better it works. And the less water you use, the less obviously heat that you extract. So by having a super low flow shower head, it actually makes this thing less efficient, but we're also using less hot water. So in the end, we chose to do it because they're super inexpensive. I think it was about $600, and they're passive, there's no moving parts, and they just last forever. So anytime someone has a shower, then they're actually far more useful in larger sort of commercial applications, like at swimming pools where they use a ton of hot water. They can capture that heat and reuse it. But I think they're becoming slightly more kind of common these days, but still it's something you don't see in most houses. We'll move on to the next one. So this showing the solar thermal system, right, Andrew? Is that what we were trying to focus on? Yeah. Oh yeah, it was the, so we had Simple Solar, which is Tom Jackman's company. He installed the solar thermal for us. So there's 3 flat plate collectors, and the system really just runs itself. And you can see in between the panels and the flat plate collectors, there's sort of 3 smaller solar panels, and they run the pump. And they sort of, you know, as soon as the sun comes up and the heat starts going, they start the pump. And Tom's got I think it's proprietary temperature regulator. So the glycol never gets higher than a certain temperature, which makes it last forever. So in a lot of systems, the glycol gets really, really hot, and it degrades when at really high temperatures. And so this thing will basically, it has a loop that sort of bypasses the system when it gets too hot. But the water in the summer regularly hits 70 plus degrees, and it's ridiculously hot. So we have obviously a mixer that prevents it from scalding us. But this is the tank in the basement, and this also runs the in-floor radiant heat in the concrete floor in the basement. So we did do a little bit of sort of mixing around after we moved in, and when we added this system, we switched our boiler to a radiator, which I'll talk about in a second. But this tank runs our floor. And actually, to be honest, this year we decided to not run the floor because it's in the basement. And if I were to design the house again, I wouldn't bother with in-floor radiant heat. I would just put electric radiators in the rooms, which is what we did in our rooms upstairs, in our bedrooms. Just heats a huge amount of space. It takes a lot of energy, and it's, I think, kind of inefficient. We don't need to heat that whole space. So in retrospect, I probably wouldn't. So we didn't even use it this year. We just used space heaters in the basement just to try it out, and we saved quite a lot of energy. So this is our electric boiler. And this initially, when we first built the house, this ran the floor in the basement. But now when we built the house, we kind of realized we didn't have enough heat on the main floor, which was kind of a bummer. But we installed sort of retroactively this hydronic radiator that gives us about, I think it's 12,000 BTUs, and that heats the main floor pretty well. And so that just was luckily easy to retrofit into, this is kind of right above the mechanical room. So now the electric boiler runs that as well. There is a coil off of there's another line that goes to the HRV, which sort of preheats the air, but we don't use that very much either because you can see it on the left, those copper pipes running through that duct. This is the heat recovery ventilator. And we found, we still need to try this and see if it works to insulate this duct to keep the heat. But often we found that just the heat in that coil was just heating up the mechanical room to a nice, lovely temperature, which we didn't really need. And we just found that when it gets freezing cold out, we either just turn the HRV off or we cycle it a bit so that it doesn't freeze up and so that we don't just blow hot air out into our backyard. But this is a Zender 350 heat recovery ventilator and gives us fresh air. I think it's about 90% efficient. So pretty standard on I think at least most energy efficient houses these days, but I think it's becoming more standard in others. This is the inverter. So the system on our main house on the roof is central inverter. And we did that because there's literally zero obstruction for our system at all. And when we built this in 2014, I guess they would have been installed around then. This is what we had. And so the roof is 4.7 kilowatts. The panels, I think, are 260 or 265s. And then we did micro inverters on the garage, and those are 330 watt panels, or maybe they're 335s. And they are, those are micro inverters. And I mean, it's a bit of just a pet project to do the garage because it is shaded about 3 months of the year, fully shaded 3 months of the year, sort of mid-November to February kind of thing. But then we get full sun. And so it slowly creeps up the panels as the sun comes higher in the sky. And so that's another I think we're roughly 7.8 or something like that for the house. And that gives us just over 8,000 kilowatt hours a year. And our house, we have a tracker. It's called the NetZero. It's a little thing that goes on a CT, that goes on our panel, and depending on the year and if we've run the basement floor or not, and when we got the radiator, we sort of toggle between 9,000 and 11,000 kilowatt hours a year for consumption. I think this year we were just over 8,000 produced and just under 10,000 used. And the solar thermal plates collect, I think they displace about 1,500 to 2,000 kilowatt hours. And the reason I like the solar thermal, well, the PV guys were trying to convince me not to bother, just to expand with our PV instead of going solar thermal. And for sure, it costs a lot more. But what I like about the solar thermal is that the system itself, like our house is obviously connected to the grid, and we sort of play that game of exporting and importing on the grid, but the solar thermal system is technically off grid. And so we're displacing distribution and transmission charges as well as the cost of the energy to heat hot water. And so I like it for that reason. And it's primarily because we're an all electric house. So the reason we chose to do that is when you look at your gas bill, even just being connected to the gas line, if you don't even use 1 single gigajoule of gas, you're paying $35 a month, about just to be hooked up. And so even though electricity is obviously much more expensive, we aren't paying those fees. So it's probably a wash in terms of the cost when you factor in how much cheaper natural gas is, but then we're not burning the fuel. And now that these retailers are offering these sort of premium prices to generators in the summertime, this year we're getting 26 cents for 6 months of the year, and then 6 months of the year we pay about 7. And because we overproduce so much in the summer, right now we're at about 320% of our consumption. So we're anywhere between, say, 250 and 400% we overproduce in the summer. And in the winter, obviously, it's probably the opposite. But when we get these huge credits in the summer, that just accrues, and then we eat up that credit through the winter. So last year, we were pretty darn close to net $0 on our house. So we basically don't pay any energy bills, which I think is fantastic. And when we first moved into our house, I think we were getting 20 cents, and then it went to 22, and this year it's 26. And the ISO seems to be on board with this, and the retailers are allowed to offer it. So we're going to just kind of go with it. But being net $0 to me is pretty awesome because we're paying nothing for energy. And that's because we are connected to the grid. So that's my little spiel about that. And then of course we try to change our behaviors in summer, winter. Now in the summer, we turn on the dishwasher or do our laundry when the sun is shining. Because we're displacing, then you use the electricity before it goes out onto the grid, and then you don't have to import. Because the way the billing works, you only get credit for the energy that you export. You don't get credit for distribution and transmission charges, which is kind of a bummer. So if you're importing at night, you're paying those D&T charges, not just the energy charge. And so if we use it before it goes out to the grid, then it's free. And that's what we try to do in the summer when we're paying that 26 cents. Okay, we can move to the next one.
I think that's the end of the slides.
Last one? Okay.
I believe so. Yeah, that's the end of the slides.
Okay. Well, maybe my last little spiel then would be that a lot of what makes our house near net zero is behaviors and the choices that we make in the way that we live in our house. We have all LED light fixtures. Of course, we turn our lights off, basic, simple things like that. Changing when we use, the dishwasher, or, trying to keep the heat low. We turn it down in the winter, or at night during the winter. And in our garage, we have a suite of bikes, one of which is our prized electric cargo bike that we use to cart our kids all over town. And we charge that up when the sun is shining. And so we really try to live lightly within the house that we did build. And maybe I'll just spend 2 seconds, if I have time, talking about the insulation and the windows.
Christina, we have about 14 minutes left.
Okay.
Normally at this point we would go to questions. Do you want to explain your windows or go to questions?
Yeah.
First?
I'll just do a couple minutes on the construction of the actual house.
Okay.
So the walls, the basement is ICF, which I think is roughly 30 R32. The main walls of the house are double stud. So they're it's a 2x6 and a 2x4 wall, and we did blown in fiberglass, and I think they're roughly R40. And then we did triple pane windows from Cascadia, and they're tilt and turn, sort of the European style of window. And so we put our money that we had into the windows, into the PV system, into the insulation, and the exterior, the roof, and the north side of the siding are aluminum, as well as the same in the garage. And then the wood on the house that you see has unfortunately been a bit of a bummer. We did shosugi ban, which is this Japanese like burnt style wood where they char the wood, and hasn't held up as good as we thought. So either you're gonna have to stain it regularly, or in the long term we'll probably have to replace it. But so that's just in a nutshell some of the construction features that we incorporated as well into the design. So I just wanted to add that part.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's throw things over to Gordon, our quizmaster, and see if we've got any questions for Christina. Gordon?
Thank you. We do have some questions. First of all, Christina, if I may, I really like it that you're not the only one in life that hangs up your clothes in your house.
I feel like there's very few of us, but I keep feeling to do a sort of quick back of the envelope calculation to figure out how much energy we would save, and therefore emissions, if we all just hung our clothes. And sometimes people ask me, why do you bother? Isn't it a waste of time? And sometimes my reply or retort, depending on what the tone of the conversation is, well, how much time do you spend, or do we all spend scrolling through Twitter every day? And then I also say, well, we don't pay anything for electricity. And that usually at least gives them pause to think about it.
Yes. The use of our time. Yes. I really like it, for me, that the moisture goes into my house, and so my house doesn't get as dry in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been doing it for 30 years. So, hey,
Yeah, well, I grew up doing it, and that's where I guess it comes from. It's just a habit. That's what we did when I was a kid. So,
yeah, I do use my dryer, I don't know, twice a year on fluff, and that's about it. But then, hey, um, so somebody else wrote in saying, I'm so with Christina on the clothes dryer. Things dry crazy fast here, and dryers use so much energy. And then the question was, do you ever get behind on your clothes drying? Is it at all a condensing washer / dryer for when you get behind?
no, I never get behind on clothes washing. What I get very behind on is clothes folding and clothes putting away.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's my problem is I have no problem hanging and washing and hanging. That's the easy part for me is
Yeah.
taking down and folding and putting away. But it's not, it's just a straight up, it's a AEG, I think is the brand of the washer. It's a lot smaller, but I can shove a lot of stuff in there. And it's just straight up washing machine. There's no condensing, there's no heat pump, no nothing in there. It does the trick. It's one thing I like about this one. It spins. I mean, they come out quite dry, to be honest. The spin RPMs on you can change the RPMs that you want on the spin depending on which cycle you use. But yeah, they come out pretty dry. And then we also have an outdoor up on that terrace off of the main bedroom upstairs, sort of the indented space that's off of our bedroom, and I have this sort of like retracting clothesline thing so we can hang clothes outside as well, which I love to do in the summertime.
That's in the front of your house, right?
On the south side, yeah.
Or that we could see in the aerial view.
Yeah, you can't see it's actually on this, you see the lines hanging there now. Those have been removed, and I found a different kind of contraption that's sort of like you open it up and it collapses, and it's this big sort of square, like there's way more real estate on it. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's where I tend to hang some as well. So,
okay, thank you. A question here from, I think his name is Tom in New Brunswick, if I'm reading that right. How much energy or dollars do you think you save in the winter by occasionally using your wood heating burning stove?
You know, that's a tough question because we have tried to calculate, you know, how much wood we use. We sometimes burn spruce and pine, but we do tend to buy, we have a guy up in High Level or High River who we get birch from, and it costs us about $200 to $300. So when I say net $0, I should put a little caveat there that that's not including the money we spend on the wood. I don't think we save anything by using the wood, to be honest, other than we're not using electricity from the grid. We've tried to calculate sort of roughly how many kilowatt hours are in a cord of wood. I think we go through roughly a half a cord to 3/4 of a cord a year. So that's not an extraordinary amount of wood. But I'd have to say, I don't think it saves us anything when we factor in the cost of the wood.
Right. Well, I used to heat my house in the early 80s with wood, and I loved it to pieces. But as an engineer, I'm allowed to do silly things with numbers. So I actually weighed each piece of wood before I put it into the wood stove. And then knowing the energy density of wood, then I could calculate how much energy was coming out of it and making some assumptions about efficiency and stuff. A question that came in, is the wood stove, is the combustion air intake on the wood stove connected to the exterior? Does the stove take?
There's an exterior draw. Yeah, you can't see it actually. And if I were to do this again, I wouldn't have put the pipe right out the back of the stove. I would have put it coming out the top and then go out, because sometimes in the winter, the draft it's hard to light if the draft or the wind isn't going the right way. To draw it in. Sometimes we have to turn the HRV off or open the window to light it. And then after that, it's fine. But yeah, you can't see it in this photo, but the pipe goes out the back. And then if you can find an exterior picture of the house, you see the chimney going way up along the west wall of the exterior of the house. So you can kind of see there, yeah. So I'm not sure if that answers the question or not, but the fresh air intake is in this little box at the bottom.
Okay. What's the brand name?
It's Morso, MORSO with a line through it. It's a Danish company.
Marcia.
Morse, yeah. And
Yes.
it's from, we got it at, where did we get it? Fireplaces Galore, is that, or Barbecues Galore? No, I actually can't remember where we
So
got it.
locally.
Yeah, we got it in Calgary. Yeah.
Fantastic. How long have you been in the house roughly? How many
We've been
winters?
in the house for 6 years.
How do you clean out the chimney?
Well, the first couple years we had someone do it, but we thought that was a little ridiculous because it was quite expensive. So Scott bought a kit at Canadian Tire, and we bought a shop vac, and he does it himself.
When I
One
heated
thing that we need to do, which is really annoying, and I have to say this year has been the worst year, but we get a lot of birds going down the chimney, and there's no mesh on the top, so we have to let them out. Like in the springtime, it's quite funny. Sometimes there'll be 2 or 3 birds in there, and we have to. So, but it's really high, and it's hard to get up to, and we don't have a long enough ladder, and so long term we need to get a piece of mesh to cover the top of the chimney.
Oh, I see. So you don't get into fried chicken at all.
They're all sparrows, but yeah.
Sparrows. When I was heating with wood, we would burn a lot of green wood. It was actually deadfall from the forest that I lived in, but we got lots of green wood, which I thought was fine. And I would purposefully have chimney fires every once in a while. I put in a whole pile of cardboard and just let that chimney get rip-roaring hot. But they were small chimney fires. And after about 4 years in there, we got a liter of creosote. So it was very, very clean burning. But
yeah, no, we tried to clean it out. I don't think he did it this past fall, but every once in a while. I mean, it's not super clean for sure. But that's why we choose birch for the most part, because pine and spruce and there's a lot of poplar around here. Like we could get tons of poplar for free, but it's not it's not clean burning, and you get a lot of crap in there. So
yeah, we always use poplar.
Yeah.
A couple more questions. Somebody wrote in saying, keep in mind that vents are not required for clothes dryers if ventless models are used.
True.
Which is what you would want to plan on if you were to do a passive house build. Another comment, the water cistern is a great idea. It's great to see net zero design that extends beyond energy and also to the use of resources such as gray water, wastewater, food production. How big is your cistern again?
It's 11. I think it's either 1,100 or 1,200 liters. I can't remember exactly.
Oh, okay.
We actually initially looked into some rainwater harvesting to put it in to do the toilets and stuff, but the cost was just ridiculous. Like the payback was like 150 years or something. So it wasn't worth it. And there's a lot of very strict rules about valves being like, if you're on the municipal water supply and you're also connected to this like gray water or rainwater in the house, it was a non-starter, unfortunately. But I know there's some stuff out there now that you can install after the fact, that like there's this thing called the Hyperloop but it's like 4,000 euros or something. That doesn't include installation. So water is extraordinarily cheap, unfortunately.
Yes.
There's not a lot of incentive to reduce consumption. Like our bills, you save water, you don't really save money because there's so many other costs associated on your bill than actual cost of water. You could halve your water consumption, but you won't half your bill, which is annoying. But
keep in mind that Calgary used to not, it was my understanding at least, not charge for water. You would charge a flat rate per month. No meter, and it wasn't metered. I don't know if that's the same as
Calgary charges. Calgary's metered. I have some friends in Fernie, and it's a flat rate there, but Calgary is metered, and so we get a monthly charge per cube.
Yeah.
Cube of water.
I believe I'm in Edmonton, and I believe our price of water here is, including sewage, is 3 liters per penny.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Just somebody wrote in and said for a cord of wood, it's roughly, depending on the species, 5,800 kilowatt hours for a cord, or 21 gigajoules for a cord. So it'd be really fascinating to keep that in mind as you
to look at that, depending on the species, and it's sort of been anywhere from our rough calculation was sort of 2,000 to 3,000 kilowatt hours. So, but again, it depends on how cold the winter is, depends how much wood we burn, and all that. So I think we might be out of time here. So
Yes,
anyways,
I'm happy to pass it over to Andrew again.
okay.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Christina. That's a very interesting house, and you're a wonderful spokesman for energy efficiency and energy efficient homes. So thank you so much for showing your home to us today. We're going to be moving on to their next home today is the Montgomery, also in the Montgomery neighborhood, is a Montgomery passive house. And I'm going to just wait till the top of the hour here before we start on that. But we will have Frank Crawford with us today to tell us a little bit more, and interestingly, a little bit more about passive house. Now, one of the things Christina mentioned was the two-tier rate for solar for people that have lots of solar. And our sponsor, Solar Club, has a number of retailers that offer that two-tier rate, which is proved to be very effective. Okay, let's go to Frank Crawford now, and Frank is going to present live his house, which is the Montgomery Passive House in Calgary. Frank, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. All right,
All
and
right.
there you are.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So we did do the video before, and it's on the website. So it was about 30 minutes. So I will speak fast this time, going over mainly the same info, but quicker, so we get more to the questions at the end. Yeah, I'm friends with Christina. Our kids go to the same school, hang out together all the time, and yeah, we're trying to make things better in our little part of the neighborhood. So for me, when you first want to design a building or build a house, kind of the first thing you need to is determine what your life goals are, what your values and needs, and how that property can then relate to them. Your house is one of the biggest investments you'll ever make, so you want to make sure the house supports those life goals. So for myself and my family, we wanted an energy efficient, comfortable, and resilient home that had low energy bills, little maintenance, and a secondary suite that provided some stable income to us. And while the land it helped us become more of a self-sufficient, not quite by no means off-grid, but we're getting closer to self-sufficiency here, our little kind of urban homestead. So next slide. So building to the International Passive House Standard, which is what we decided to do. That provided us the predictable low energy use and the utility cost savings, plus a comfortable, quiet home with excellent air quality and no drafts, no cold spots. And then we had a 7.2 26 kilowatt 26 panel solar array on the roof, and that produces 40% of our total energy used on the site, both our house and the secondary suite. We installed some annual food beds on the south side of the house to grow an increasing number of our food, and a greenhouse in the backyard so we can kind of extend the season. And then change slide. And then on the north side, which is the roadside, or what people see, we put a permaculture perennial food forest similar to what Christina has that grows kind of perennial foods. So we plant them once and we get to keep harvesting them over and over again with less and less labor involved. We also have about 4,000 liters of rainwater storage on site right now. And I guess we're also converting our neighbors. They have 3,000 liters of storage and no grass either. And the neighbors on the other side are taking out most of their grass as well. So it kind of you expand from your own house. So the legal 2-bed, 2-bath secondary suite is 1,150 square feet. And it provides us with a nice steady income so that my wife and I no longer have to work full time. We both work part-time from home so we can spend time with our 2 young kids, 4 and 6 as well. The house and the land is now the business card for my energy efficiency consulting services that I provide to others. We only have 1 car. It's a Toyota Prius V hybrid. And we also have a number of bikes and e-bikes, although less variety than Christina does. Next slide. So the Passive House Standard is a performance-based energy standard or building standard that's been around for 30 years. It has some very strict performance metrics that you have to meet to to meet it. I won't go into the details of that now. We can come back to it later if you want. Next slide. There's 5 main principles that make up the passive house standard. It's insulation, air tightness, thermal bridge free, your windows, doors, their locations and the shading of them, and then providing mechanical ventilation because you can no longer breathe through the cracks in your walls. Next slide. So there's various different levels of certification. So Passive House Classic is kind of the one that most people know about. If you go Passive House Plus, that's actually equivalent to NetZero. And if you go even more by putting more renewables on the roof, you go to Passive House Premium, which is net positive. There's also different standards for retrofits, which is the Enerfit standard. And kind of for more complicated, colder climates, there's also the Passive House Low Energy Building, which is has slightly reduced performance metrics. Next slide. Okay, so here are the energy stats for the house. So the PHPP, which is the Passive House Planning Package Energy Model that we used, it estimated we'd use 19.1 megawatt hours per year. And the 3 and actually 4 year now average, we have been using about 20.6 megawatt hours. So there's your predictability in modeled versus actual. Just for reference, if we built the same size house to code minimum, we'd use about 58 megawatt hours, and a standard kind of 2,000 square foot house uses about 40 megawatts. And again, we're not a single house, we're basically a duplex. There is 2 families living here, 5 people or 6 people, depending on who is in the basement suite. That 7.2 kilowatt array produces 8.2 megawatts of energy per year. So we have 22 megawatts net energy use, which would be about a 44 on the EnerGuide scale. And also, I guess, as far as bills, so our yearly gas and electricity bill is varied between a high of kind of $2,100 per year and a low of $1,100 per year. That's gas and electricity. We do have gas to the house. That's obviously been decreasing. We are also in the solar club like Christina, and as that export rate goes up from kind of the 18 to the 26 cents per kilowatt hour that's now, our utility bills are dropping. And again, this includes the $650 worth of fixed utility costs. So our blower door test, which you see there is the blower door test going through. We got 0.45 air changes per hour when our vapor barrier was accessible. So that's kind of the mid-construction test. We have a installation cavity on the inside of the house. So when the drywall and everything was done, our final blower door test was 0.28. So well below the passive house standard, which is 0.6. Next slide. Here you can see the 8 inches of EPS insulation below the slab, as well as a combined air and vapor barrier membrane, which is actually hidden or protected between the 2 layers of foam. That membrane is just poly, and it comes up and would be connected to the waterproofing membrane on the outside of the exterior concrete walls. Next slide. Here you can see the inside of the walls. So we did a balloon framing. So that's what you see is your structural 2x6 wall. And in front of that, with the vapor barrier going behind it, is the rim joist for the second floor wall, or second floor TGIs. Next slide. Here you can see the insulation details for the windows. So we had 2 inches of XPS insulation all the way around our windows to break that thermal bridge. And then it's tied into the weather resistant barrier, which is that blue SIGA, as well as the clear SIGA on the inside. Here you can see the above and below grade insulation. So there's 8 inches of quick therm tongue and groove insulation with that membrane already applied to it outside of the concrete walls in the basement. And there's 6 inches of rock wool dual density cavity rock above grade with a 2x4 airspace, and then hardy plank or hardy panel siding on top. Next slide. Here's our Zender HRV. We have, this is the 550, which is size for the whole house, but unfortunately I had to put in a second one, Zender 200 for the secondary suite. They're pretty standard for high performance passive house houses because they are certified passive house equipment, but there's becoming more HRV options. And for our house, since we're in Calgary, which is such a dry climate, we used an ERV, which is an energy or entropy recovery ventilator. So we are recovering both the heat and the moisture and they work to between 84 to 92% efficiency, depending on the model. So as I mentioned, we do have gas. So our hot water is provided by this Navian on-demand hot water tankless heater. It is a combination unit, so it provides hot water when needed, and when it's not, then it also has another loop for a simple 2-zone hydronic system, and those zones kind of temper or warm up the HRV air in the winter from kind of the 16 degrees. It comes out of the HRV up to about 22 degrees. But the main heating for the house is straight electric resistance heaters. We have either $100, $200, either 400 or 1500 watt wall mounted electric heaters. They're very simple, they're very inexpensive. If they break, you just replace them. But they're super silent, they make no noise, and that's all you need when with Passive House you drop your energy demand by that much. So we do have gas, but now that the $5,000 federal retrofit grant has come out, I'm doing some research into some cold climate ductless heat pumps, and I will likely install one of those into my house to provide some heating and cooling at a kind of COP of around 2.5 for the winter months. Because yeah, the cold climate air pumps are now better than they were 5 or 6 years ago when I started designing the house. Next slide. So we moved into the house in 2016. It's a 2,900 square foot total house. It's basement, main floor, and loft. So the total cost is $575,000. The fixed costs, or the hard costs, were only $450,000 without land. This is all without land. So what I did is I put another $125,000 on that for myself, my labor, my dad's labor, and I acted as a general on the site. So if I had to hire someone else, their profit and labor. So that's how I came up with the $575 to kind of build my house in 2016 dollars. So if you take the above grade square footage, it's $340 a square foot. If you actually include the developed square foot, which includes that fully developed basement suite, it's about $200 a square foot. So definitely still well within the range of a custom home in the Alberta or Calgary market. There's a specific heat demand, the air changes again. So the walls I mentioned briefly are R33, they're split insulated. So structural 2x6 with 6 inches of rock wool on the outside. The roof is TGIs with fiberglass batt insulation for R60. Below grade is 8-inch concrete wall and the 8 inches of the quick therm insulation for R37. Below the slab is an 8-inch concrete raft slab with 8 inches of type 40 PSI foam. Below that for R37. And the windows are triple paned, high soil heat gain on the south, low soil heat gain on the north, argon filled PVC windows. They're from Clearwall, which is out of Ireland, but there's now lots of Canadian manufacturers that make high performance, high quality windows. Next slide. So a little bit of lessons learned. So this is taken when I moved in. So we do have a 2-inch concrete topping slab on the main floor. And it looks lovely. It's great for thermal mass. It's very durable. It's very cost effective. However, what I didn't do or what I didn't know is that when you're pouring the concrete, if your vapor membrane is installed and you are vapor tight and you're very airtight passive house, you need to open a window. Concrete doesn't dry, but it does, when it cures, there is some initial moisture that needs to come out of the surface. And if you don't let that moisture come out, you can get what's called spalling, or basically flaking of the top surface. And that is what I am getting on my concrete surface. So it's doesn't look quite as nice as it did a few years ago. So a bit of lessons learned. Next one. So Passive House officially allows you 10% overheating, and they define overheating as above 25 degrees Celsius. So that's too much in our climate. I designed to 8%, which I thought was fine, but I'm overheating too much in the summer. I'm too hot. So what you see here I've done is a very cost-effective way to lower that overheating. I put 89 or 85% shade fabric screens on the outside of my south windows. They go up kind of in the spring or in the summer, depending, and they block out more sun so that the sun doesn't come in the windows and doesn't overheat my house. Now I'm down to about kind of 4% overheating, which is much more bearable. So I guess the lesson learned is, yeah, design to under 5% if you have some mechanical cooling, and maybe even 0% if you don't have any mechanical cooling. Next slide. So the next one is passive houses are very quiet. Like there is almost no outside noise that you hear inside, and there's no mechanical noise. The background noise in my bedroom where I sleep is like 22 decibels, which is basically breathing. So you want to be careful about internal noise. So we did do rock wool in all the interior walls, but what we didn't do is I didn't do quite enough between the main floor and the basement secondary suite. I did have the concrete topping slab. I did do some acoustic isolator below that, but what I didn't do is acoustically isolate the drywall. So there is more sound transfer, mainly the footsteps transferring down. So yeah, you do want to make sure you worry about the internal sound transfer. One more slide. So the thing I love, and everyone else on the tour has said this too, is that the best thing about an energy efficient house is the comfort. Every room is comfortable all year round. There's no drafts, there's no cold spots. This is a 5 foot by 10 foot window. It's my bench for my kitchen or my kitchen table. Outside it's minus 20 degrees, and me and my kids, it's the best place to sit in the winter because it's nice and sunny and warm. So that's, you kind of start off doing it for the energy efficiency, but you enjoy it for the comfort. And that's all.
Thank you, Frank. That's a great summary, and thank you for talking about Passive House. We'll put you over to Gordon, our quizmaster, in a minute, but I'd just like to throw a couple of comments around here to start with. And in your Passive House design, the magic number is 15, and that's 15. What is that, and could you explain what that number is?
Yeah. So what Passive House does is they set a hard target for the space heating demand, or sorry, the annual space heating demand per square meter of living space. So it's kind of your treated floor area. It's basically the space inside your walls. And they set that at a limit. And for Passive House Classic, it's 15 kilowatt hours per meter square per year. For Passive House Low Energy Building, they reduce that to 30 kilowatt hours per meter squared. And the interesting thing is, if you look at some other high performance standards, like the Canadian Home Builders Association NetZero standard, they have a space heating demand as well, and it's around the 30. LEED, if you're getting all the points on LEED, you're getting to somewhere around that 30 number as well. A lot of the excellent NetZero builders in Edmonton are building kind of the 20 to 25 kilowatt hours per meter square. So all of them, like Passive House started with this 30 years ago. Everyone else is kind of starting to come around to the same type of number. So it just, you need a hard target. Percent better than code doesn't work. You need a hard target to make sure that you get that comfort.
Now, originally, didn't Passive House originate in Europe and Germany? And no, Gordon is shaking his head. He's got a different feed on that. Gordon, where did it originate?
It originated in Regina.
Well, it was the Passive House standard was made in Germany, but when the scientists that did it looked at high performance building from all over the world, including the Saskatchewan Performance House was one of the main drivers for it. But the Germans, they looked at everything everywhere. They did a very rigorous review of the research. They did a very rigorous review of the energy model and came up with what they call Passive House. But they built on, yes, all of the shoulders of Harold Orr and everything else that we have done in Canada. We just, when the Arab oil embargo ended, we stopped caring about energy efficiency. Germans didn't.
Yep, I totally agree. And a few years ago, the Passive House people flew Harold Orr from Saskatoon to Europe to give him an award for his groundbreaking work on which the Passive House took so much leadership.
Yep.
1979 was the Saskatchewan Conservation House.
Yes.
It was fantastic. And it has changed housing around the world.
Yeah, and now Passive House is, they have over, I think, 60,000 60,000 buildings all over the world in all climates. And so it works everywhere now. Yeah.
So, but that specification, that 15 kilowatts per square meter per year, that's pretty substantially difficult to achieve in our cold climate. It'd be much easier to achieve in Vancouver or Germany or any of these other more mild climates. But for us, that's actually pretty substantially, that means really airtight and really well insulated.
Yeah, well, and that's why in our cold climate now, most people are designing to passive house low energy, the 30. Because yeah, you can get to the 20, 25 without killing yourself, but those last getting those last 5 kilowatt hours savings, you have to do some things that don't really pay back. Okay. And also the whole reasoning behind that 15 is that in certain climates with certain layouts of buildings, you can heat your house purely with your HRV ventilation air, which is a pretty low volume. So that's why they came up with 15. The problem in our cold climate and our, relative to Europe, bigger open floor plans is then we definitely can't heat with our space heating demand. So there is no actual big savings. There's no mechanical savings, big savings when you get to 15.
Yeah, so we have seen a number of passive houses come up on this tour before, and they're very airtight and they're very comfortable and everything else. But I was always curious that they still had some form of gas heat in them. And whereas in the NetZero homes that we're seeing out there, they're going away from gas and going all electric. And I think that's more a regional thing because of the current microgen arrangements that we have here. If you go NetZero, you go away from gas, but in the passive house, it doesn't specify where your heat comes from.
Yeah,
just
totally
that your performance of your house overall has to meet that particular standard.
Yeah, but I guess most passive houses are now going all electric because the cold climate air source heat pumps are catching up.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Gordon?
Yes, I love what Frank is saying about the passive house. I look forward to next year coming and seeing it in person, Frank.
Hopefully there'll be one in Edmonton you go to, a shorter drive, but yes.
Yeah, that's cool. How do you like your domestic water heating system? I think you said it was on demand.
To be honest, I don't really like it.
Really?
Yeah. No.
What don't you like about it?
Well, so first of all, some people call it instantaneous, and it's not. It's on demand. So when you turn the tap, the machine comes on. There's still probably 10 or 15 seconds while the machine kind of boots up, like speeds up before it turns on the burner, before you start to get the flow of hot water. Yeah. And then in my case, I did what's called a home run system on my piping, which means every single hot water supply or every single pipe is its own home run. I did that because now I have 0 joints anywhere in a wall. The only place I have a joint is at the fixture and at the manifold. So there's no possible way to have any leak inside my house. The downside is every time I have a water call, I got to get rid of the cold water in the tap. So it does take a while to get to, it doesn't take that long, but it does take longer than instantaneous would say. So that's why I always say on demand. The other thing is that even though these things are sold here, they don't really work in -30 either. Like the ducts, it's a small little 3-inch duct. And if it gets frosted up, the thing stops. So I've had the plumber in there 3 or 4 times to look at the Navion hot water tank. The other thing is because it's tankless, as soon as it stops working, you have 0 hot water. With a tank, you still have that tank full of hot water. It is nice that you can have an infinite shower. And the other nice thing is since water is fairly cheap in Calgary, and I don't have a drain water heat recovery, I just plug my tub. So I'm heating my house with my shower. So I'm heating it with the same thing that I'm heating the space heater. So having a shower is heating your house and it's humidifying your house. So you don't have to feel bad about having a half-hour shower because you're heating your house and the water's not expensive. But no, I also find that with this unit, I don't know if it's just the Navion or others, I call it overrun. Like once it's kind of figures itself out, it stays at a constant temperature. But for me, it starts cold, it gets hot, and then it seems to get too hot, and then it comes back down to the temperature you want. So again, you just have to get used to it. But yeah, 6 years ago, I didn't really have an option and I liked it. And it is a condensing boiler, so it is 96% efficient when it's running for a longer period of time. But now I would do an air source heat pump, either a Sandin or the Rheem hybrid models.
But just to clarify, this system does your space heating and your water heating?
Yes.
Well,
okay. It does some space heating. It's only maybe 20% of the space heating. It heats up the air coming out of the HRV from about 16 degrees to about 22 degrees. So in the shoulder season, it does everything. But at minus 30, I still have those electric resistance heaters that kick on.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Somebody wrote, and thank you for your comments on it. That's been my experience with on-demand water heaters too. And I do want to appreciate that some people love them. Somebody wrote in and said, would a water loop solve your hot water run issue?
Yeah, so what I would do now is Gary Clean's way of building it, where yes, you do a loop and you have a pump at the end, and it's an on-demand system. So the pump at the end of the hot water return loop going to a tank. You need a tank, can't be a tankless. And then you have an on-demand button in all of your kitchens beside your hot water. So when you want hot water, before you want hot water, you push the button and that starts the pump. And the pump starts moving the cold water out of the system until it sees hot water at the pump, and then it turns off. And then that's your branch line that is just now charged. And then you make your twigs go into each faucet as small as you can, like using 3/8 instead of half-inch pipe where you can, so that optimally you only have 1 cup or like 10 seconds of time or volume before you have hot water at the fixtures.
So Frank, if I can just do an add-on question to that, I've seen these loops. They're very common in commercial buildings like hotels, where they need to move hot water from a long way away. And usually what they do is the pump's running continuously and they insulate those pipes. Now tell me a little bit more about these switches. What kind of switch would those look like?
It's just an on-off switch.
So you just use like a light switch kind of thing?
Yep, just a button. So yeah, you basically everything in the setup is exactly the same, except the control of the pump is what's called an on-demand control, as opposed to a timer or a always running. So basically, you still have a temperature sensor in the water just before or after the pump that shuts the pump off, and then the on-demand switch at all the locations just says turn pump on until you get warm again.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I save my shower water every day, and it's about 3 liters, and I use it for watering plants, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. So somebody wrote in and asked whether you can throw out a name or two of the cold climate heat pumps that you've found suitable for here. He said he's not having great luck, and he hasn't seen many on the EcoSolar home tours.
Yeah. So there's 2 different ones. For the multi-position air handler ones that basically can replace your furnace, there's kind of the Mitsubishi, I think it's Zuma, or the Daikin Fit has a multi-position air handlers, or the Fujitsu. So for the multi-position ones, there's kind of 3 that work fairly good. They all work to kind of minus 25. You have enough space in this multi-position air handler that you still put your giant toaster element as your backup heat. As far as ductless mini splits, these are the ones where there is no ducts, or there's very short ducts. It's not a whole furnace system. I'm still looking for a good one. There's the ones I want, like the GE Appliances, or the Haier has one that works to minus 35 Celsius with a COP of almost 2, but I have not found that one in North America. The ones that look to be the most promising would be the Daikin Fit unit as well, or the Daikin One, I forget exactly which it is. But Small Planet Supply also is now importing a new one. It's the Midea is the brand, which is actually, it's from China. It's one of the bigger manufacturers in China, and lots of these other ones are actually just a renamed Midea. And it's got fairly good performance and fairly cost effective as well. But finding the machine and then also finding an installer to install it are 2 different things. And that's the part I'm still kind of researching. I think in Edmonton, you're probably going to have better luck finding the installers. In Calgary, There is installers for the multi-position air handlers because they're basically, it looks like a furnace. It's a lot simpler, but for these ductless mini splits, I'm still waiting for quotes. So
Well, we look forward to
check back to me within a month or two, because it is an excellent use of that 5,000 credit.
Thank you. We look forward to keeping track of your next decisions on this. Another question, during the design phase, did you have contingency plans to address the overheating in the summer? For example, did you have a design strategy for the exterior window shading solution, and perhaps other measures such as a rough-in wiring in place so ceiling fans could be added? So I do appreciate you mentioned the exterior windows, but do you have some comments?
7 years ago, or 6 or 7 years ago, when I was one of the first designing this, no, because no one knew it was a problem. And I didn't know it was a problem either, because I was under the 10 that Passive House says.
Yes.
But living in it for 4 years and having more of them designed, people are realizing that 10, and even Passive House now says 10 is the maximum, 5 is the recommended. They should just change it to 5 being the maximum.
Right.
So no, I didn't really have any contingency. I had to kind of come up with options. I looked at extending my gutters with either like another metal kind of fascia piece or soffit extension, which could work. But I found that these screens are kind of the $40 option. Yes, now I tell everyone always to put a plug beside your window. So if you have to put exterior roller shades on, then you can do that. Because with a Passive House, the windows are so airtight and so well sealed, you can't insulate them, or can't do your shading from the inside, because you'll just make an oven and you'll break your glass.
Yes.
You need to insulate it from the outside.
Yes. In this photo that we're seeing now, what's the white box on the to the left of the windows?
Oh, that white box, that's my $200 1,500 watt heater. So that heats kind of half the house. You can see the HRV duct in the box below, and yeah, then you can see the screens. So
okay, there's somebody wrote in and said, oh no, sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. Can you unpack the screens a little bit more? Tell us a bit more about the screens.
So basically you buy, I think it's 95% shade cloth. So it's cloth that's used to go over greenhouses, or basically it stops 90 or 85% of the UV rays.
So it's called shade cloth.
Shade cloth, yeah. You just buy shade cloth. You can buy it off Amazon or the internet, or any greenhouse store will have it.
Okay.
And then you go to a window store and you buy screen material, like the white aluminum extrusion to make a screen. And then instead of putting in like a bug screen, you put in this shade cloth.
So these screens are what we see here in the picture. They don't go all the way to the top. That's actually the fixed position of that screen. Is that correct?
Yeah, and they could go all the way top, but the part above the screen is covered by my overhang.
Ah, yes.
So my overhang is not enough. So the bottom half of my window is exposed, because when you're shading with overhangs, unless you're adjusting those overhangs, you set it at one elevation.
Yes.
And the other kind of error that I made in my house is on my south side. If you can go back to the south side photo, I have an elevation at a kitchen window. I have a lower elevation for a door, and I have this elevation for my big window. So I just had to pick a level, and it doesn't shade enough. So that's why on the bottom of some windows, I put on this shade fabric. One more back, that's one. So basically the overhangs shade that kitchen window, but they don't shade the bottom 2 feet of the big window. And that's what I'm shading. And then
because the window is bigger.
The window goes down further. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then all I did is I put basically hooks or little hinges on it. I screw those into the frame, and then when I put them on, I just hook them on, and then in the winter I take them off.
Okay.
So it's sort of like storm windows from the 1950s and 60s, except reverse.
Yeah.
Sun windows.
Sun windows. That's great. Thanks for that explanation. Somebody asked or wrote in and said, the comments regarding concrete floors are interesting. I've learned from my experience that one might need to be careful in choosing concrete contractors and to try to find one that has more specialist experience on floors as opposed to general concrete work.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you have any comments on that?
Yeah, definitely find one that is used to doing concrete toppings,
Toppings.
which is a pretty common thing now, either in commercial buildings or lots of people use concrete topping. So find someone that's used to doing an exposed finished concrete topping slab or topping, and then just make sure all your windows are open if you are airtight.
Do you have concrete countertops too?
I thought about it, but we thought that it would just be it'd be too cold of a feeling, like visually. So we did wood countertops. But yes, concrete countertops would be an excellent use, again, for thermal mass. They'd be very durable. You could even justify granite countertops for the same reason, the thermal mass. But just given everything else, we like the wood look. We have a wood plywood reveal around the windows. That's actually that plywood that is the crate that the windows came in. So I reused that instead of throwing it out. But that plywood kind of ties in quite nicely to the wood countertops. And they're just an IKEA countertop that we sealed with lacquer, and we treat them like furniture. And they've lasted the 6 years with very minimal maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Somebody wrote in and asked, did you use Extensia additive in the flooring?
No, well, I'm not sure exactly what Extensia is. So I purchased from Burnco their self-consolidating concrete mix with plastic fibers in it. So that way it smooths out fairly well. The plastic fibers stop you from getting the cracks. It's similar to Agilia, or there's basically a self-consolidating mix is what you want to use. You don't want aggregate in it because my thickness is only like 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So it's very small aggregate, if any.
I'm quite fascinated by concepts that are called point source heating, and they are more feasible in houses that are super energy efficient. Yep. So I wanted to know, in your house, how many points of mechanical heating do you have, such as that yep. picture that.
So there you see a $100 400-watt heater. So there's one of those placed near the supply for the HRV. So there's
four on the ceiling there.
Yeah, which is in the ceiling. So there's 4 of those in the 4 bedrooms. Then in the secondary suite downstairs, I have one 1,500-watt heater in the open living room, and that's it. And then looks just like that one. And then in the main floor, I have that one that sits there all the time. And then when it gets to -30, I roll out another 1,500-watt, just oil radiator type heater. And I could permanently mount it somewhere, but I haven't found a good place to mount it, so I just roll it out. So yeah, there's 6 or 8 distributed heating sources. The nice thing about that is, yes, you can, within like 1 or 2 degrees, because otherwise the house will just normalize. Yes. You can sleep in a cooler space or have some spaces warmer or cooler within 1 or 2 degrees.
And how many watts were the heating devices in the bedrooms again? 400. 400. So 400 in the bedrooms, and then 1,500 in the main areas?
Yeah. Yeah, so they say you can heat your passive house with a hairdryer. Hairdryer is about 1,500 watts. So right. It's about 4 hair dryers in my house.
So 6 kilowatts.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. 4 hair dryers.
And I haven't put the monitoring in. I don't know if they ever all turn on at once. Right. They're all on thermostats. So they come on when they need to, and the rest of the time they just sit there.
Have you ever heated your house just from your electric stove?
Yep. If you're cooking a turkey, your heat does not come on.
But I think we need to keep in mind that everybody can heat their house with hair dryers. It's just that some of them need 30 or 40 hair dryers.
Yeah. And I do have an electric induction cooktop. Yes. So it's harder to heat with that because it's fairly efficient.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Frank, for your presentation. We're about to get on to the next one, but it was really, really interesting. And I really look forward to seeing it next year in person.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we want to thank our Calgary sponsors. That's 4 Elements, who do lots of house assessments. Innotech Windows and Doors, who supply wonderful windows and doors for super efficient houses. Skyfire Energy, which is one of Alberta's leading solar PV system installers. The City of Calgary and all of the great work that the city is doing on climate change mitigation. And Solar Club, a number of energy marketers around the electricity marketers around the province who offer high summer prices for exported electricity. And now over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Gordon. So the next home we're going to be looking into is the Ramsay Garage Suite. Now, this has been on the EcoSolar tour, the Calgary tour. We did this in 2019. And what's interesting about this particular suite is that we get to talk a lot about the solar thermal. You'll notice that we've talked a lot about solar thermal today and a number of different homes. The actual installer, most of that solar thermal is in this particular video that I'm about to show. So I'm just going to get ready to start that video, and then afterwards we will be able to have questions with the homeowner, whose name is Cor Coster. So let me just set up to get going on that video.
We're producing more energy than we consume on the suite, which is a two-people suite upstairs and a functioning studio workshop downstairs. But the excess production of the thermal and the PV is being exported to the primary residence, where we, on the PV side, on the electrical side, we're almost positive on both buildings. On the thermal side, not quite.
Welcome to Green Energy Futures, your guide to the green energy revolution that's already underway. Hi, David Dodge here for Green Energy Futures. Solar thermal heating systems are one of the most mature renewable energy technologies. After the energy crisis in the 1970s, Israel embraced solar thermal so much so that today 90% of the homes have solar hot water systems. But then along came cheap solar PV, which seemed to take some of the wind out of the solar thermal sails. But despite this, solar thermal is alive and well. Today we talk to Tom Jackman of Simple Solar, a Calgary company that has installed 80 solar thermal systems in the last 8 years.
Hello, I'm Tom Jackman from Simple Solar here in Calgary. We provide solar energy systems for residential applications. We provide both solar thermal systems and solar photovoltaic systems. Solar photovoltaic make electricity and solar thermal make heat, and our homes need both. We're standing in front of a laneway house in Ramsay of Calgary, and that's a new build that has both solar electric systems and solar thermal systems that we provided.
When Jackman started Simple Solar, he was only installing solar thermal hot water systems. But today, more often than not, he installs solar thermal alongside with solar PV. So how did Jackman decide on the mix of solar PV and solar thermal that you see on this laneway home?
The homeowner wanted as much solar as he could get, and in fact, we make quite a bit more solar power than just the laneway house uses. And the excess electricity and the excess heat is transferred to the house through a piping and wiring system. The photovoltaic system is flush mounted on the roof. You can't see it that well, but it's there. There's 5.5 kilowatts of solar photovoltaics. These 6 different solar thermal collectors, 3 on the wall and another 3 up above, total 12.5 kilowatts of solar heating capacity.
According to Tom Jackman, the advantage of solar thermal over solar PV is energy density. The roof of this garage suite produces more heat and electricity than the suite needs. It's net positive, exporting excess heat and electricity to the main house. This integrated approach plays on the benefits of solar thermal and solar PV and overcomes one of the refrains that solar thermal is too expensive. GreenBuilderAdvisor.com went as far as to pronounce solar thermal is dead, thanks to the dramatically reduced cost of solar PV. But Jackman says his patented design has simplified and reduced the cost of solar thermal, making it competitive.
We have developed a system that's very reliable and very cost effective. Most people don't do that. Well, nobody else does that. So they've got high pressure, high temperature resistant line sets and components, and that's what drives the expense. It's not the collectors, and it's certainly not the tank. Those items are mass produced, you know, all over the world. It's the piece in between that is driving the expense, and we've optimized that, and that's our key to success.
So how does solar thermal work? The evacuated collector tubes that Jackman uses get their name from the vacuum space inside the tube.
Here's a small version of one. You can see that there's 2 layers of glass in this tube, and the air has been evacuated out between those layers, so it's an insulator. The vacuum is an insulator, and so the temperature outside doesn't really affect it too much, and the sunlight easily comes right in, hits this dark coating, and is transitioned to heat. And all that heat gets focused to the inside and comes out on this pipe. So the tube.
So what's inside?
Yeah, there's in the installed versions, there's heat transfer plates that transition the heat from the side of the glass where it's created to this copper pipe. And these things get really, really hot. If you leave this out in the sun and touch this, you'll burn your skin right off.
That's one spicy meatball. Instead of using complicated sensors to turn the system on and off, Jackman has paired his design with a solar PV system to keep it running when it needs to run.
That flow happens because of previously mentioned photovoltaic powered pump. So the 2 little PV panels on the outside energize the pump when sun's shining and is creating heat. The brighter the sun shines, the more heat's being made and the faster the pump runs.
From the collectors, a glycol mixture carries the heat to the storage tank. One issue with glycol is that when it reaches above 90 degrees Celsius, it begins to degrade and eventually has to be replaced. A typical solar thermal system uses expensive sensors to detect and regulate the glycol's temperature. Instead, Jackman uses a simple thermostatic valve connected to a heat dissipator to keep the glycol at temperature.
And as the tank gets hotter, the glycol gets hotter until the point where the glycol hits 90 degrees Celsius. And at that point, we have a control valve that says, hey, this is getting too hot, and that valve opens up and directs glycol to the heat dissipator. And we have the heat dissipator tucked in behind the collector here, right up in there, and it runs the whole length of the collection array. And that's how we dissipate extra heat. And that maintains the glycol at a maximum of 90 degrees, which is below the degradation point. So our glycol will last the life of the system.
Cornelius Coster owns the Ramsay Laneway home. Jackman originally proposed a much more modest solar system for the garage suite, but Coster, himself a green energy advocate, insisted on using as much space as possible.
We basically built the suite to a maximum height on the eaves trough side, and then by city regulations we are allowed to extend that height for another 1.6 meters, which basically is exactly the height of the top bank of the thermal tubes on the roof. And then we added another 3 banks of PV thermal on the face, on the south-facing side. So the wall component of the thermal is basically for winter production because of the angle, and the top bank of thermal is ideal for summer production.
By mixing solar thermal with solar PV, Coster was able to pack a lot of energy production on his roof. So why do this?
Again, the passion for renewables and the environment, combined with obviously some financial calculations, made it clear to me that it was affordable to actually spend and invest money on renewables, and in this case, PV, solar, and thermal, on a long-term basis.
Want to learn more about this award-winning net positive garage suite in Calgary, Alberta? Check out our blog, podcast, and photos at greenenergyfutures.ca. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel and check out our other videos. For Green Energy Futures, I'm David Dodge.
Well, great. Thank you very much. And I really want to thank David Dodge and Green Energy Futures for giving us the permission to show that video today. That's a great introduction to the solar thermal, and a nice introduction to the Ramsay Laneway suite. Now, I believe we have Cor Coster on the line. Cor, are you there? Cor needs to be unmuted. Let's hang on.
Right. Can
There's Cor. There, Cor, welcome, Cor.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thanks for having me. Thanks for putting this together, and thanks, Gordon, for joining the team on the quiz master side.
Right. So now one of the things we can do, Cor, is I actually have pictures, and you'll see the first picture up there. This was the 2019 tour, and we were just a few minutes into your time slot. So I'm going to suggest that maybe we walk through the pictures that I have from 2019, and you can give us a little bit of detail about this laneway suite and explain some of the features that maybe didn't get explained in the same detail in the video. Would that be all right? Would we start with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That sounds good.
So this is the laneway suite.
Yeah, so we're looking at the laneway suite. It's on the south side of our property. We live on the north side in a little cottage style house. The laneway suite, as you can see, has a flush mounted PV for the electricity generation side, and then 180 tubes of PV thermal. Behind the wall mounted PV thermal, you can slightly see, or almost see, 3 windows. So the apartment that's on the second floor actually does get quite a bit of light. Does get quite a bit of light inside their suite.
Now your house is an older house, and I don't believe you've have you done any upgrades to that yet?
No, I haven't. Based on some simple calculations, it's not really worth it, Andrew, to do anything to it. So basically, all my efforts went into the suite, and to make that somewhat of a power plant and implement some passive house details.
So this is from your backyard, looking at the suite.
That's right. Yeah. So there's a trench that runs from the suite.
Oh yes.
To our house, and that kind of starts at the white man door here on the suite, and through that trench, that's where the heat and the electricity gets shared to the main house.
So how do you transfer the heat into the house? Is it coming in with a glycol or a liquid, and then what's in the house to harvest the heat from this?
Yeah, so in the garage we have 2 80-gallon tanks that we use for storage on the thermal side. We have the same thing in the main house, and that's really 1 80-gallon tank. So any residue heat that's being generated in these 2 tanks gets transferred to the house if there's access, and then that water in the house, that tank in the house, provides hot water for domestic use. And if there's anything left in the wintertime, there's also a plenum in the gas furnace that actually will dissipate heat from the tanks if there's excess heat, and preheat the air that comes through the gas furnace into the main house.
Another picture here, I think. Oh yes, there's some of the electrical and some of the hoses coming down. Looks like you have hydronic heat in the floor of your garage.
Correct. So there's hydronic heat on the garage floor, and also up in the suite.
Okay, so I see it just going in right there. Okay.
Yeah.
And then next picture, just those tanks again. There's some expansion tanks above that. That's all part of the solar thermal system.
Correct.
And this is under the staircase leading up into the suite, so you can see the angle.
Yeah, correct. And here you can actually have a good view at what Tom Jackman was talking about earlier. The tanks and the collectors are readily available. It's really just a piece in between, right? The plumbing that actually makes this system work.
Right. Now you're actually in the renewable energy industry, so this was in your garage on your tour day last time.
Yeah.
What do you do in the renewable energy industry?
Yeah, I do a few things. I'm a regional manager for this company, GP Joule, and we're an EPC, so we build solar farms. So we engineer, contract, and procure solar farms. And for them, I'm a regional manager, and then I also dabble in the solar carport business with some partners.
Nice. You also have a very interesting car. This was one of the very first times I'd seen one of these cars. Maybe you can describe it for me.
Yeah, and funny enough, yesterday this lovely little Prius was jacked and was raised by 2 inches. So we're going to try and slowly turn it into a little dune buggy. But this is a Prius Prime, a 2018 Prius Prime, a plug-in hybrid. So a gas engine in the front and a battery pack in the trunk floor. And I get about 40, 45, depending on the weather. Sometimes 50 kilometers of electric driving.
So this is what they call a plug-in hybrid. So this actually, you can run it all electric, not like the regular Prius cars that you don't have the selection. In this case, you can say, just take me electrically first, and then when I run out of battery, kick in the engine and go further, right?
That's right. That's right.
Very, very interesting.
And then another really interesting feature on this car, and it's actually not in any manual, but there's a function in the car where you can actually charge the battery while you're driving with your gas engine. So, let's say you drive from Edmonton to Calgary, you drain your battery half an hour before you get to Edmonton, you charge your battery, and then when you get to the city limits, you zoom around electrically again.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now this is the entrance to the suite. So this is off the back of the garage. I believe that's facing east.
Correct.
And it's a separate entrance. And then we go up. Sorry, there's another picture of the car. We'll carry on into the suite. Now this is in the suite.
Correct. So as you saw in the first picture, I built the house, with a passive house design in mind. But the other important item that I wanted to achieve was a low maintenance suite. So my stairs are aluminum cladded, concrete floors.
Okay.
High gloss, high hardened paints, almost like an epoxy. So it's I'm trying to maintain it and run it as a low maintenance suite.
All right, we just have a couple of pictures. Well, look, there's Gordon enjoying the view.
Yeah.
And there's the staircase going back down, and I can see the sloped roof from which is sloped for your solar on top of that. That's very interesting.
Yep. And you can see the high pitch of the far end, and it's a fairly funky roof. I mean, we've seen a couple on this tour already.
And so this bedroom takes advantage of the high. This bedroom takes advantage of the high roof. There's another storage space or possible bunk for kids up top there.
That's correct. And then behind, up in that storage space, you see 2 little sliding doors, and that's where my HRV sits, my HVAC.
Oh, okay. And I also see they have the washer dryer built in there as well.
Correct. Yeah. Self-containing.
This is back to the back looking. Now this is looking out the window. This would be looking down on the backyard.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was probably the most expensive part of the whole build. This crazy rectangular window.
The triangular window.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then this is looking back the opposite view through the. So it's essentially a 1-bedroom. It's got a large living space. And then it has this separate bedroom bathroom on the east side.
Correct.
All right, now I actually took a picture out the window to actually take a look at the heat dissipator. So this is looking out a south window, and those are the solar thermal collector tubes. And just in behind them is this solar thermal heat dissipator. And so it's just tucked in right behind them, and you can see it out one of the windows here.
Yeah, that's right. And I have to say the system, the PV thermal system works really well, and sometimes actually too well. And by that I mean it does vent off quite a bit of heat on a hot summer day like today we have in Calgary. So I've if I would ever have to do this project again, I would seriously think of some sort of storage system where I would be able to contain the heat, maybe in the form of a cistern underneath the main slab, or actually heating soil. I know that's been done a few times over somewhere around the globe, but there's a lot of heat that I lose in the summertime that could be used in the winter.
Right. Okay. So now this is down below. So now this, I guess, garage and workshop. Is that what you have here?
Yep, garage and workshop. So that's ours, and then the man door on the left-hand side is the entrance to the suites, and then our house is basically against the little man door that you see back here are on the right now. Yep.
So this is just some pictures of people enjoying the tour in 2019. And yes, you've actually won an award with this house. Tell me about the award.
Yeah, we were the winners in the green building category for the Mayor's Urban Design contest. I think it was 2016, 2015, 2016.
Okay.
And that was run through the city of Calgary.
Nice.
Yeah, and
Very
we had
nice.
documentaries, and David Dodge has come by a few times. Yeah, it's been a fun project.
We also had lots of information on the tour on the solar thermal, including these heat pipes, these solar thermal collectors that use a heat pipe to collect the thermal. And it was great fun to be able to take a look at them. They're basically like a big thermos bottle with a copper heat pipe that goes down in the middle.
Yep, that's right. And you can actually get little tiny tubes that use them as little cooking stoves or little cooking devices for your camping trip.
Oh, okay. Okay. And there's some views from the outside. And I think I just have a couple more pictures and then just one final one here. There we go. Okay. All right. Now let's go over to our quizmaster, Gordon. Gordon, do we have any questions today?
We do have a few. Thank you very much.
Not too hard, Gordon, please.
I'm sorry?
Don't make them too hard.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I do remember visiting your house 2 years ago, June 9th, if I am remembering correctly. So the questions that came in are, what's the rough service lifespan for the solar water tanks for your solar thermal system?
Yeah, so the tanks that I have are actually stainless steel tanks, so they're not going to rust out. But what obviously does need to happen is I drain them every 3 years just to get the calcium out and the crud and just to kind of keep the system clean. But they're stainless tanks, so they're not going to rust out.
Now you're running glycol throughout, aren't you? Not water at all. Yep. And you don't drain it down; you just keep it in there throughout the cold nights.
Yeah, and a plumber comes by once a year and checks the pH to see if it still has the value.
Once a year.
Yep.
So if I'm just going to interrupt here, yeah, there's a lot of solar thermal systems out there where they actually drain the glycol down into a tank. So it's not actually up at the collector, so it's not overheating on a hot summer day. And the glycol doesn't actually go up to the collector until the sun shines. And this system is what's really interesting about this system is the glycol is always there, but it circulates automatically because of the little solar panels that power the pumps, and it automatically diverts either to the heat dissipator or to the tank, depending on what's needed. So this is as he says, it's a simple solar system.
Yeah, it really is. The only moving part is the little 5 watt or 6 watt pump that's kind of sitting behind the plastic covers that you see on either tank. And that's really the only moving part.
Another question that came in was, what maintenance service are you thinking about for the complete system, other than the once a year pH measurement?
Yeah, that's honestly that's really the only maintenance that needs to be done. I mean, in the beginning, there was some hiccups as in trying to optimize the system, but we're now in year number 6, and it's the last 3 years it's been running very smooth with no problems.
Yeah, which is great.
Really nothing to do to it.
How long do you think the glycol would last?
I've changed that once, so I'm kind of looking at 3 years, 3-4 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So with the picture,
optimum.
Yeah, thank you. So with the picture that we are seeing now, how would you go and change the glycol?
Oh, so a plumber would come in and he would hook up his little pump and take off the supply and return off the system, and basically just drain it and fill it back up
through what we see here.
Correct. So those tanks are dual coil tanks, huh?
Oh,
so two coils per tank.
Do you have food grade glycol or industrial grade?
And industrial.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And I remember from years ago, there was always the discussion about two double wall heat exchangers or single? Do you have double wall?
No, I have a single wall.
Okay. And
Just
if
because
the,
that mechanical room stays really hot with those tanks in there anyway, right? It's
Yeah.
very little heat.
have the plumbing codes kept up to this? Did you have any discussions or issues with the
No,
plumbing inspector?
no problem so far, or no issues. No,
No inspection issues when he
no
first turned it
inspection
on?
issues. No.
No leaks?
So in the main house, we actually have, and you know, the inspector did make a point about that, but in the main house, we have a similar one of these tanks in the main house, and that had to have some extra attention, but that was just based on the fact that it was an older house.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of what, this is a question that came in, do you have an idea of what the costs are?
Yeah, so your ROI on your PV thermal is going to be much higher than on your your regular PV. For me it was a little bit of a gimmick, but the other thing that I kind of tell myself most of the time and tell other people, PV thermal is not cheap, but keep in mind that you're also not paying for a furnace and all the ductwork that would go with a conventional gas system. So I'm looking at around 15, 16 years. So it's not a big cash generator, but it's there and it does the job.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
And does this garage suite have any methane gas supply to it at all?
No, there's no gas hookup.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so for a backup heating system, you have electric resistance heaters?
Yeah, correct. So if you go back to the two, the picture of the mechanical room with the two tanks, you can see the two backup heaters that are screwed into the side of the tanks, and they will kick in after. It seems to be 3 or 4 days of no sun in the winter.
How many watts of heaters of electric backup?
They're I think 4.5 kilowatts. Like they will
total
suck a lot of electricity. Yeah. No, each.
Each.
Yeah, they're fairly big units.
So 10 kilowatts total.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another. So do you have a ballpark cost though for the whole of the solar thermal system that you did there?
Yeah, I think for the so this is obviously 6 years ago, and I think the number was sitting at around 24,000.
Okay, thank you.
Installs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So back then the whole system was around 42,000, including the PV.
So 6 collectors for 24,000, including the tanks.
180 tubes.
180. Yeah, thank you.
The other thing that's usually integrated, by the way, is a hot tub, right? And especially in either winter or summer. But I actually can't do it. But lots of people actually do integrate a hot tub to get rid of heat when it has to dump.
And the nice thing about having a hot tub with a solar thermal system is that because the extra heat is free, you can run the hot tub later and later into the winter and open it up earlier in the springtime.
That's right.
Because the heat is there anyway, so why not?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of how long the evacuated tubes would last?
Yeah, I mean, if the glass doesn't get damaged and it doesn't lose its vacuum, they will last forever. And I actually noticed the other day that I think I actually lost my first tube on the top bank. That's the first tube in 6 years. And you can actually see a broken tube and it kind of turns white.
Yes. Usually when you look at the back of it, though, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I agree. But when you're actually looking from far away,
yes,
I kind of see the difference between the good ones and the one bad one. It just looks a little whitish. Yeah.
What brand of evacuated tube collectors are they?
No idea, Gord, sorry.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I mean, Tom tells me you can get them anywhere really, and they typically all come out of China.
Right. Yes, China is by far the biggest manufacturer of evacuated tube collectors. And when I was doing some solar thermal work years ago, I found out that, and that's because they don't supply heat to a number of their buildings. And so having solar there is at least a way for them to have warm showers in the wintertime. This is what I was told. So it was a great impetus there for developing this technology and then being able to export it around the world.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know that I have any other questions coming in. Oh, yes. Yes, sorry. How did you decide on how much solar thermal versus how much solar PV?
Yeah, I pretty much try to. I designed the building with an architect friend of mine, and then Tom Jackman came in with Simple Solar, and we designed, the PV thermal and the PV system, and went indeed from a modest system to a system where we, where we basically try to pack PV on every possible surface, and that's what really ended up happening. And that kind of became a reality when we also figured out how we could actually tie in excess heat and power into the main house. So on the electrical side, I think the main house gets power by about 35% from the suite, and then on the thermal side about 40%. But the suite itself is completely net positive, obviously.
So would you change any decisions nowadays with how much solar PV versus how much solar thermal, considering that your house is 6 years old or something?
Yeah, I would probably, have scaled down the PV thermal a little bit, just because there's so much heat that actually does disappear in the summer. I mean, in the winter it runs fine, and it also produces, quite well. But in the summertime, there's a lot of excess heat that I wish I could, supply other people with.
Absolutely correct. At least you get to run it into the other house. But and so the loop to the main house, is it a glycol also?
Yeah, it is. It's the same system, the same pumps that run it.
Ah.
Yeah.
And it just
we have a backup pump in the house. And
I think you said that there was another one of those tanks inside the house.
Correct. Another 80 gallon tank. Yep.
And is that for space heating of the house or for water heating also?
Yeah, for domestic hot water primarily, and then if there is enough heat and the furnace kicks in, it will also draw extra heat out of the tanks and run it through a plenum in the intake duct of the furnace.
Cora, I have a question for you. The actual run from the garage to the house, can you describe that? How deep is it? Insulation? What permits you needed? Could you describe that, please?
Yeah. So that was actually the hardest scope of the project to get permitted through the city, and that had to do with the fact that the garage is actually quite, it's about 3 feet lower than the main house, so there's a very little drop to get to the house to use gravity. So the depth of the piping coming out of the man door of the suite is really only about 2 feet. So what I had to convince the city is that I did come up with a design with the help of an engineer, but we built a insulated trench with 4-inch thick styrofoam walls, floor, and a cap where we run the feed and the return for the glycol and the power lines into as well, together with water and sewer. So that's all. All of that is nicely compacted into a very well insulated trench, and that was a tough one to permit.
Did they give you any hassle about having electrical lines and essentially glycol lines in the same trench? Because that's something I got picked up on when I was trying to do some work like that.
He did not say anything about it, believe it or not. Mind you, I had the electrical in a separate conduit too, right? The wires were also in a conduit next to the glycol lines.
That makes sense. In my case, they wouldn't let me put a water line in the same trench with all my buried electrics.
Yeah. Maybe it's might have to do with the fact that it was in a conduit, maybe.
Isn't it fascinating to be involved in solar these days when things are changing so much?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
of
yeah.
course, when you're building solar farms, we're seeing that hugely, aren't we?
What's that?
When we're building solar farms, we see huge changes in the technology with the modules and the tracking. And
Oh
that.
yes, yeah. I mean, even if you look at the panels that I use for the suites, I think they were 365s, and on the commercial side, we're now looking at, 550, 560, 560 watt panels. Yeah, it's still going quite rapidly.
There's a huge solar rush happening in Alberta these days that I don't think that the general public really understands.
No.
I keep track of this, and it's something like I think there's 8 gigawatts of solar farms under development or on hold waiting for development, and that's what $12 billion worth of private investment in solar farms happening, generating 10% of Alberta's electrical energy if they all get built, something like that. So GP Joule must be wonderfully busy.
Yeah, yes, we are. I think we're building around 160 megawatts this year.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's going quick. And I think the other interesting component when we're talking about utility scale solar is the number of PPAs, the number of power purchase agreements
Yes.
by the big commercial companies like Amazon or Budweiser or RBC.
The bat.
Well, Cor, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to make you explain what a power purchase agreement is, because not everybody on our call here would know what that is. Would you mind explaining that, please?
Yeah, so a power purchase agreement is basically an agreement between an off-taker, so a electricity consumer, and a power generator, so an electricity generating company. And that PPA typically has a lifespan of anywhere between 15 and 30, but they all seem to kind of sit in that 25-year mark where the two parties will come to an agreement on a power purchase price per kilowatt for that particular length of a contract. And the idea behind that is that power prices are going to rise fairly substantially, and then you might be able to chime in on that, Cord. But what companies are trying to do is basically hedge themselves against higher power prices, plus that they can also brag about the fact that they're also involved with green electricity.
So the basis of it is that a company, let's say an Amazon or something, is looking for a large volume of electricity, and so they approach a company like JP Joule and say, if I paid you, and let's say, just for example, 3 cents a kilowatt hour for the next 25 years, will you build, operate, and provide all that power to me at your cost? And you say yes. And if they said 3 cents, you'd click your heels and say, that's great, because that's a pretty good price, isn't it?
Yeah, that would have been a good price, but it's not that low. I can guarantee you that.
Not quite that low right now. Okay, good. But that's the basis of a power purchase agreement. Is the developer of the solar, they actually have to fund it, get the loans for the capital costs, and then they pay it back over a period of years based on the power that they're selling to this company.
Correct. And then a big component of that whole financial agreement, and particularly on the off-taker side, is also the tax advantage, right? And that has that's pretty much in the same kind of scheme as the oil and gas sector, where oil and gas has enjoyed substantial support from provincial and federal government over the years, and we're going to see the same on the solar side.
The capital cost allowance on the capital cost of the renewable energy, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm fascinated that the world's 13th largest solar electric system is being installed by Greengate at the Traverse plant, I think near Vauxhall or something.
Yeah.
So it's huge what is happening. Okay. Well, we're reaching the end of our time with you, and I really appreciate you coming back on the tour again this year and showing your grad suite again and how things are working. It's always good to keep in touch with that.
Yeah, no, great. Hopefully we'll see you in person.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, great. Thanks everybody for your help, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cor. And so now we want to thank our Calgary sponsors, 4 Elements, which provides consulting services for energy efficient homes, which is great, based in Calgary. Innotech Windows and Doors, which provides high performance windows and doors for super energy efficient houses. Skyfire Energy, which is one of Alberta's largest solar PV installation companies. And Calgary, City of Calgary, for their great work in climate change and their recognition of the Solar Home Tour as helping spread the word about what can be done to reduce our own emissions. And the Solar Club energy marketers who sell electricity around the province and who also pay 25.85 cents per kilowatt hour for the exported electricity if you are a microgenerator. Anybody can use a Solar Club, or the Solar Club retailers, of course. And now I pass it over to you, Andrew.
Right, thank you, Gordon. We are coming up on our last home of the day, and this is the Southland Solar Home. And with us today, we have Raiko Pavic, who we saw yesterday at the Killarney electric vehicle location. But Raiko also has his own home and has a new solar array that he's put in, which I think is really quite beautiful. And he uses that to charge his car, and so his electric car. So we're going to take a look at an introductory video that Raiko and I did a couple of weeks ago. And then once that video is done, we will go to questions. So let's start the video now. Hi there, and welcome to the EcoSolar Home Tour. My name is Andrew Mills, and today we'll be talking about the Southland Solar Home in the Southwood neighborhood in Calgary. With me today is Raiko Pavic, who is the homeowner. Welcome to the EcoSolar Home Tour, Raiko.
Thank you, Andrew. Nice to be here.
So your home's an example of an energy efficient home that features some upgrades to the lighting, and you've done partially upgraded your windows, but it also has 6.6 kilowatts of solar, and you want to show us an electric vehicle today. So give me a bit of background on why you chose to upgrade your home like this. What were the main things you were trying to accomplish?
So we were just trying to make the home a little more sustainable, and also better to run long term, because obviously stuff like solar system and the electric car is very much a long term play. You do pay quite a bit upfront for the systems, but then operational costs are significantly lower, which of course works for us because it's sort of a security thing, right? When you know you can invest into these systems, then you know that you're more secure, going to be more energy secure down the road. You're not dependent on crazy gas prices like we have right now, and stuff like that. So that's kind of what we were aiming to do. 2 things is basically sustainability on the level of actual like environment and lowering the emissions, but also on a financial level, where we're going to be more financially secure as the time goes on.
Oh, that's really interesting. Now, give me a bit of background on some of the other features that you've got here. So let's take a look. What would you say is the standout feature of your home right now?
So I would say still the standout feature of the home would be the 6.6 solar kilowatt solar array that we have installed on top of the pergola on top of the garage, because that feeds the vehicle, but it also feeds our home. And for example, for the past year, we've been about net zero in terms of how much energy we produced through the solar.
And net zero in electricity only, or
electricity only so far?
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is the system a little bit up close. We decided to go with bifacial panels, which are panels that you can see. Of course, the cells are very much silicone and non-transparent, but they're encased in a transparent glass. So what it does is basically allows still sun to come through because the space underneath the pergola for us is going to be a deck. So we still want to enjoy the sunshine at least to a certain extent. So it's kind of a shading. So it works very nicely. You'll see in some of the photos here. And you can see the inverters on these photos. What the system uses is microinverters in sets of 4. So basically 4 panels go to a single inverter. So the system has 5 inverters because there's 18 panels.
Interesting. Yeah, so these particular solar modules, they have glass on the back where usually it's a plastic sheet. And by putting glass on the back, it allows the light to come through the gaps between the solar cells. That looks very nice. I really like the look of that.
Yeah, and it's funny because that is not the purpose actually of bifacial panels. The purpose of bifacial panels is it lets the light through, and then the light reflects off whatever is in the back and hits the panels from the other side. So they actually produce a little bit more.
Right.
It's just for our purpose, they work really well, almost because of the visual, not because of the function.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, and the bifacial systems usually cost slightly more than regular systems, but in an application where you where like we do have basically dual purpose system. Like in our case, it's a solar system, but it's also a cover for the pergola. So that's why we kind of wanted it transparent.
Right.
So yeah, in my opinion, it's completely worth it because it's really nice. And of course, as most solar system nowadays, the installers give you access to the application, which will give you data for your current production, your daily production, your monthly production, yearly production, of course, and all that stuff. So you can kind of watch how your system is performing and all that stuff.
With the sunny day that you have behind you there today, I'm sure you're making the full 6.6 kilowatts right now.
Well, the solar system actually produces a little bit less because 6.6 is the rating of the DC.
Oh, okay.
So once you turn that into an AC, it's a little bit less. But yes, today was an amazing day, so it's really nice to be outside and enjoy the sun.
Excellent.
And here you can kind of see on the left photo how you can see the sun through the panels. So you can clearly see that the sun is coming through. And then on the right side, it's our neighbor's cat enjoying the shade of the solar panels and the strawberries that we have there.
It's a very attractive deck. I'm sure you'll get lots of good times out there. Now, let's take a look. Are there any other features of your home you want to feature today? Perhaps your electric car?
Yeah, so definitely the second biggest defining thing of the home would be an electric car that's powered by those solar panels. So what that allows us to do is not only offset a lot of the emissions that go with creating the energy for powering the home, but also in creating a lot of energy that moves the vehicle. So in our case, it's a battery electric vehicle, which means it's fully powered by electricity. There is no gas engine or anything. So basically, we just power the car with the electricity that we produce, and that way we kind of set the best. Sorry. And the vehicle we have is the Kia Soul EV. Oh, sorry. Kia Soul EV 2016. We got it used, and that's our main family vehicle.
So I'm very interested. Now this garage, now your pergola and your deck are actually above the garage, and that's level with your house. Is that right? With your backyard. So you're set into a hill a bit off the back.
Yes, that's right. So if you look at our house from the south side, it's basically 3 levels. So the backyard that you're seeing, or sorry, the back lane that you're seeing here is 1 level, and then the second level is basically part of our backyard where the pergola is, and then the third level is our grass portion, if you want to call it, of the backyard and the actual house. So it's like kind of it's on a slope. So that's what allows kind of.
I think that also gives you really good sun exposure too, because this is all facing south, right?
Yes, exactly. And the big part actually why we wanted to put the solar not on the house itself, but on the pergola is because around the house we have 2 really big trees. You can actually see one of them behind me there. Yeah. And actually on this photo on the screen right now, you can see both. Right. So if we put the system on top of the house, those 2 trees would be shading a lot of the system, both in the morning from this side and from the west in the afternoon. So that's why we chose to do in front of the garage, because garage is a lot more forward and there's absolutely nothing in front of it. In front of us, basically over there is a Southland drive, so there's no trees or anything for probably about 100 meters or so to the other side of the Southland. So that's why the solar pergola gets a lot of sun during the whole day.
That's a great idea. Okay.
Yeah, and this is just a closer look at the charger. We went with the Flow X5, but there's a lot of chargers available, and a lot of them have the applications where you can stop charging, you can start your charge, you can monitor the consumption, etc., etc.
It's interesting. It says station available. That this isn't a public station, though, is it?
No, it is not. It's just in a different tab of the Flow application, but yeah, it's only basically available to me and sometimes my wife.
Very interesting.
Yes, and this is the car, basically where it lives and where it charges.
So that's an interesting garage. Now, I'm looking in there and I'm seeing these red power lines. What's the red for? I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, so I just covered the flexible conduits.
Yeah.
With red wire loom to basically just showcase the high voltage lines in the garage. Just basically to make it a little bit more fun, because we know the garages are fairly boring. So
right. Well, it's got a fairly good roof height as well. So it's, even though it's built into a hill, it's not that short. It actually looks good. It's got way less junk in it than mine too.
We try. And here's a good photo from Southland Drive. This was during the construction. So you can see that the 2 panels are actually missing on the top left and the top right. Right now the system is rectangular and has 18 panels. On this photo, it's only 16 panels that it's showing.
That's really interesting. I can see all the trees that you have in the backyard as well. Those must get it. Those would have gotten away if you'd put it on the house. That's a really nice design. Well, I want to thank you, Raiko, today for joining me and sharing pictures of your home and your lovely solar system and car. I am looking forward to coming and seeing these on the tour someday. Okay, we'll just stop that video and thank Raiko for coming on the tour today. And Gordon, do you have some questions for Raiko? I'm just going to move the screens here.
Yes, some questions are coming in. If anybody has any questions, do please send them to me, the quiz master. Which PV modules did you use?
So we used longest solar PV modules. I think they're 365 kilowatts each. They're commercial size, so they're 1 meter by 2 meters panels. Yes. I think it's 72 cells.
Yes, 365 watts each.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, thank you. You did use the AP systems inverters?
Yeah, it's AP system inverters. There's basically 4 packs kind of thing.
Yes.
So yes, 4 of them are 4 packs, and then one of them is a 2-pack because it's 18 panels.
Right, and so they're 1200 watt inverters each, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I did the design for the solar PV system carport at the Londonderry Mall, and we were particularly concerned with that design about making sure that there were no drips between the modules that would put water drops on cars below on the parking lot and wouldn't generate icicles that would drop through. But since you're not parking directly underneath it, did you have any special consideration or design detail that you did for the gaps between the modules?
Not really. So the electricians that installed the modules installed kind of a rubber fittings that slide in and cover most of the gaps. Now it's not exactly waterproof and it's not meant to be waterproof. The panels themselves actually have drainage holes. So we do still have, like when it's raining, on certain spots below the pergola we'll have the rain dripping. We never had an issue with ice during the winter. The only thing with ice is obviously like the entire thing kind of slides slowly towards the bottom, so you get the ice accumulation at the bottom row kind of thing. So I just kind of try and break it a little bit from time to time so it doesn't accumulate like bigger chunks. But yeah, that's kind of how it works.
What tilt angle is it at?
I think it's about 20%. If you look at the supporting structure, the front, what are they called? The posts or the whatever the front ones are 8 feet. The middle ones are 10 feet, and then those bigger ones are 12 feet. So it's basically from 8 to 12 feet is the entire pergola. So I think it works out about 20 degrees angle.
Oh, 20 degrees.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, 20 degrees. So that's what, 4.5, 12 or so, 4 or 5, 12.
Yeah, so it's far from ideal from production perspective, but it was kind of a compromise to have a usable cover as well as the solar system.
Sure, I can appreciate that. But a 512 pitch is fine because there's so much more to the optimum pitch than merely the amount of energy generated. One of the things that we found over the years in designing PV systems is that you want to make the energy coming from the PV system as cheap as possible. And to do that, you maximize the energy, but what we found is even more important is to minimize the cost. And so sometimes more steeper racking system and pitches cost more and don't increase the energy for the extra amount that it costs. So on commercial buildings, for example, we have a 10-degree tilt angle because then that's the lesser cost. And so the energy coming out of the PV is cheaper, which is important.
Well, let me throw a question out to Raiko, because I've got this picture up here that's showing a bit more of the timber frame construction. That's a very substantial pergola. Now, did you have to get engineering and design on that? Because that looks like you'd need structural engineering on that.
Yeah, we totally got that done and got it approved by the city of Calgary. That was a bit of a pain, but I mean, I wanted to have a very substantial pergola there to hold the solar panels in place and be something that's going to be there 20, 30, or 40 years later. So I really wanted a robust system. So all the posts are 8 by 8, and then the trusses or whatever they're called, they're 2 by 12s. Yeah,
right,
2 by 12.
Right. Okay. Now, you also have very high wind loads in Calgary. I think they're even higher than what we have in Edmonton. So that would need to have figured in the structural design.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, they were talking about that. I mean, I guess while reviewing it, just because like we didn't get a lot of details about it, but I'm sure it is compliant to all those regulations because it was approved.
Raiko, we have a fun little drone shot that you ran of this. Maybe I'll just play that now if you like me to run that.
Sure.
And this is something you just did this last week, didn't you?
Yeah.
So here's coming out of the garage. You describe this for us.
Yeah, so this is basically this is the garage, that's the charger, and this is kind of a good shot at the boat garage as well as the solar system at the top.
Very nice. So now we can see the difference in elevation to the house.
Yeah. So you can really kind of appreciate.
Oh, okay. There's that other step down. I see that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there is a shading from the trees. Yeah. Okay. That makes perfect sense. And then you can actually see the pattern on the solar modules in this picture. You can actually see the light shining through from underneath.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very neat.
Somebody wrote in and asked if you could talk a bit about the city's stance on permitting this. I guess that would be development permit, building permit, structural and electrical permit. And the supplementary question from this person was it allowed because it's technically the roof of a garage? Or did that factor into it at all?
We actually did factor, and not in a positive way as far as we're concerned, because it kind of made the process more complicated. But basically, process fairly straightforward. First, you submit for the development permit with plans for building the stuff. They approve that permit, and then you're allowed to build. Once it's built, you get the inspection and the building permit that wraps up the process. We had a complication while getting the second final approval for the system because they actually wanted the structural analysis of the garage, which we didn't have because the garage is a lot older than even the city of Calgary has plans for, and we as current owners didn't really have the plans. So we had to commission the engineering review of the garage as well before we got the final building permit for the system and everything.
And were there any electrical permit issues?
No, electrical permit was being well, basically like the solar company does that part. Yes. So that was from our perspective like really not an issue or not even something we dealt with.
Did it feed your panel board easily enough? Was your panel board in the house or in the garage?
So the system connects, I don't know if you can see on the middle post on that previous photo. No, the one with the car in front of the system. There's a tech cable running through the middle, and that goes down and across and in. Yep, that's the one. That goes down and into garage where we have a sub panel. We did replace the sub panel because it was not up to task. So the sub panel was replaced here. And then from the garage, we actually have two lines that we've put in. One line is, I believe, 30 amps. And the other line that we're actually using right now is 60 amps to the house, to the main electrical panel. Which we actually just replaced last week as well, because it was also kind of old and we just wanted a little more, like it was one panel and then another sub panel next to it and another sub panel next to it. So we kind of like just wanted it like basically built properly according to the newer standards and just integrate everything in one big panel. So that's what we did last week.
So you have 100 amp service, Raiko, and you have 60 amps going to the house then?
So the 100 amps goes to the house, to the main electrical panel.
Oh, I see, okay.
And then from the house, 60 amps and currently idle 30 amp lines go to the garage.
Oh, I see, okay.
You can actually see the conduit rolled there in the left top. That's that idle 30 amp line that used to be used for the garage. but the one at the top that's not red. No, the one that's rolled in kind of a coil.
Oh, I see, right in here.
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
That's just idle 30 amp line. If we ever want like a second charger, level 2 charger in the garage, or some other loads that will be exceeding the 60 amps that we have, but that is not really likely.
Not likely, no.
Yeah.
We had a fun comment from somebody, which, and he said, it looks like it actually takes 10 seconds to charge the car in terms of how long Ryko actually has to spend doing it.
Yeah, that's exactly how long it takes. You usually come home, plug it in, and forget about it, and you go do your own thing.
And I had the wonderful opportunity to have a use of a friend's electric vehicle for a month a couple of years ago, and I timed it also 10 seconds to charge, to plug it in, and 10 seconds to unplug it.
Yeah.
So, and I left home with a full charge every day.
Yeah.
There you are. Fantastic. How much of your soul's electricity does your PV system generate?
I haven't really compared. I know just rough numbers. For example, actually very exactly, I use about 50 kilometers a day in my electric car. Like that's according to my odometer. That's what we've put in over the last like year and a half.
Yeah.
And that's actually very, that's bang on as average in Calgary. Average Calgarian use about 50 kilometers a day. And 50 kilometers a day, it's about, was that about 10 kilowatt hours, I believe, in energy, about there.
Yes.
So basically, that's how much we use. So you can kind of see how much we use a month, and I could compare it to solar production, which I don't have the numbers handy, but it offsets a big part of it.
So
sure.
you have an advantage, however, in that your employer also has an electric charger at work. Is that right?
Yeah, that's also a nice benefit. So I can also charge at work, and I can charge at home. So I end up not really charging every day, just because the range of my car is actually not that great. It's about 100 to 150 kilometers, depending on the season. But it's quite enough for me to not even need to charge every single day. So it's quite nice.
So my rough calculations would be that the solar system provides double the use of your electric car if you're running 50 kilometers a day. So, which is fantastic, because of course, then the extra would go to your house.
Yeah, exactly. So of course we'll use the other part for the house, and that's pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And then any additional from that gets sold back to the grid.
Yeah, that's correct. So we use the grid as a big battery, as everybody pretty much do, who's running solar. When we have extra, we're pushing to the grid. When we need extra, we take from the grid.
Ryko, you also had you also gave me some other pictures here just yesterday, where you were actually using your car as a source of energy when the power goes out. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So why I used the car in that way a couple of days ago was actually when we were doing the panel swap. Obviously, the main service was disconnected. So I was just running the 1100 watts inverter from the car's 12-volt system into the house to just have power for the laptop and for the internet router, so I can continue working. And this is what you see here. The inverter that I have is, again, 1100 watts, so you will not be able to run any substantial loads out of it, nor, of course, it can be connected to like the house grid directly and stuff like that. But what it does, it gives you up an opportunity to run several, I don't know, couple of lights or a fridge, or just, in my case, just a laptop and internet, so I can work.
So that's connected to what, 150 watt cord, extension cord?
Yeah.
And back to the house to plug in your router so you could keep working. That's very clever. I like that.
Yeah, I figured out I might as well try in this instance because I had an opportunity. So I bought the inverter, and now I'm gonna keep the inverter as kind of a backup option for something in case we have an outage.
Okay. Okay.
Or I can set up a screen somewhere in the woods and make presentations or watch a movie while camping.
Perhaps your next Echo Solar Tour interview will do for you can do it from the woods.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be fun.
I have a question here. Did you that somebody wrote in? Did you see an increase or a decrease in your total electricity bill after installing the PV and using the EV?
Of course. I mean, the solar system pretty much offsets the entire cost of our electricity for a year. I think my last numbers were we paid $20 for last year's electricity. That's all we paid when you add and subtract everything. So that's quite nice. Electric car is a little less clear just because electric car uses so little electricity that you don't really see the impact on your bill. Your bill varies by month more with everything else. So those usually about 20 to $30 that you will end up spending on an electric car while charging from the grid, it gets lost in your seasonal and in your AC, in your everything else that uses a lot more power.
I mean, to charge 10 kilowatts, which would be your 50 kilometers in a day, is just going to be a couple of dollars. It's 10 kilowatt hours on a daily bill is not very much. And as you say, you're not doing that every day. So I actually have a separate meter on my car charger, so I can actually see what that is. Now you have this flow meter. Does it track how much power you are using in charging?
It actually does, but I'll be quite frank, I never actually looked it up. It is a smart charger, so it has all sorts of charging history and all that stuff. I'm actually looking it up at my app right now, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. But it does have all sorts of tracking. I just never really bothered because I know it's not much.
I have to say that the best of these energy efficiency technologies that we see are the ones that we really don't have to pay any attention to. Those are the ideal technologies. They just work as they need to, and you don't need to spend time flicking switches or doing anything else. So those are ideal, and I don't fault you for not checking the amount. That's great. It's great that it's so easy.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote in and said that the Flow X5 is capable of submetering the energy use. Was this a factor at all in your decision to purchase this particular charger?
Not really. The main consideration I had about the charger was reliability, and Flow X5 was, and I'm pretty sure it is in reliability, probably the best charger on the market. There are some decent ones. The Flow is expensive. That's a downside. But as far as the reliability is concerned, it's absolutely the best. So that's why we went with that one, just so we don't have to worry about that piece of equipment or anything.
And the person wrote in and said the Flow X5 is a Canadian product and it's built like a tank. It has a high rating for weather, which of course is important for installing outside. Now, I appreciate yours is in your garage, but nevertheless.
Yeah, exactly. The Flow X5 has the best rating. Like I deal a lot with chargers, obviously, at work with electric cars. The Flow X5 has the best NEMA rating, like not electrical NEMA, but the enclosure NEMA rating. You can basically, and I think they even say that on the brochure, like you can pressure wash it. Like it's so well enclosed, and it is built like a tank. Again, there are some other chargers that are also Canadian and decently built and whatnot, but again, Flow is kind of a step above in terms of the reliability, and it looks kind of nice too.
It does. Yeah. I just did a calculation. So if you do 50 kilometers a day at 20 kilowatt hours per 100 and thus use 10 kilowatt hours a day, then that at 14 cents a kilowatt hour for the purchase and delivery of energy in the wintertime, that's worth $42 a month. Of course, that price goes from, let's see, 42, 30. Of course, that would be $100 a month in the summertime if you were just purchasing the energy from the grid. But of course, your solar PV system is in there, so that would be a substantial savings. But
yeah, like in summer, obviously we just don't charge if we're not on solar. It's just because we're using the higher rate, so we don't want to be obviously charging when the rate is that high.
And
So you have a dual rate energy retailer, Ryko?
Yeah, yeah.
Much like the Solar Club, who is one of our sponsors. Okay,
yes.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and I mean that is the big part of how to get obviously the best money out of your solar system is that dual rate, because it does help offset a lot of the costs even during the winter, because for quite a few months during the summer we get paid. Like 1 month we got paid $95 for electricity and natural gas, because credits go to natural gas as well. And then the other month it was like we got paid 75, and then another month it was like 35. So this is all like negative that then offsets our well, they actually pay us out straight for that month, but that basically just offsets the months that we actually have to pay for electricity and natural gas.
Yeah, yeah, which is great. So you said your total bill last year was $20 for electricity.
Yep. Yep.
Nice.
That's quite okay.
Yeah, I'd say.
Apparently, a number of the electricity delivery companies in the province and in BC also use flow chargers. So it looks like they're getting quite a good name for their reliability.
Yeah, we've heard some good, even before we started working with them, and before I had my own from some friends from BC that had them for quite a while. They basically just told us there hasn't been a single warranty claim against all the chargers they've sold. So that's kind of anecdotal, obviously, but they do seem to be very, very reliable. Again, they're not like anything in life. Everything has upsides and downsides. I already mentioned the cost of a flow charger, but also the speed of a flow charger is probably one of the slowest on the market. It's a 30 amp charger. The chargers that are normally sold are either 40 amps or some of them are 50 amps capable, which is, again, like not a big deal right now because most of the vehicles can't even take more than about 30 amps or 32 amps. But as we upgrade our vehicles down the road in about 5 years or whatever, they might actually do, and some of the vehicles already do, like a Tesla Model 3 will charge at 11.5 kilowatts, which flow just can't give, right? The flow will only push about 6.6 or so. So, I mean, that's kind of a downside as well. But again, it depends what you're after, right? And what kind of car you have and what other considerations are. Normally, I do suggest the flow if you're really installing it outside, because that's obviously a bigger consideration.
I'm understanding that some of the flow chargers are rated to -40, and that's why the electric utilities really like using them, which is a wonderful thing because it's a Canadian product made for Canada, and so it's for us. Somebody also wrote in about the Flow X5. Apparently, it can be controlled remotely by the electricity company, and that there's a demand response program in BC, which have a pilot program to see how they can control the flow chargers during peak load periods.
Yeah, and actually, I'm part of the very similar pilot here in Calgary. That is also like my charger was subsidized by NMAX, who is connected to my charger and to other people's chargers, and they're doing exactly that. They're trying to figure out how people are using these things so they can prepare for when a lot more people will be having electric cars and chargers and all that.
Thank you. I understand that we can find out more about the NMAX program at nmax.com/EV, which is great. And we'll be seeing a lot more of these coming along the lines as more EVs come in. And stay tuned for the solar home tour as more EVs come into the tour every year, which is wonderful to see. Over to you, Andrew.
Well, thank you, Raiko, and thank you, Gordon. I think we've had a lovely tour today. I really like the filtering of the sunlight through the bifacial solar panels in that pergola. We saw that actually yesterday as well in site number 3, and just in the 2 Calgary homes where that's been used, very, very interesting use for solar. I really, really enjoyed that. I also really enjoyed seeing all the solar thermal systems in Calgary. We really don't see any in Edmonton anymore. So it's fascinating to see this very simple and very robust solar thermal system being used in Calgary. So that's always very interesting. One final time, I want to thank our Calgary sponsors. So 4 Elements, who does solar and does a number of energy audits and assessments of homes, and will help people design the energy saving features on their homes. Innotech windows and doors, European tilt and turn style windows available, made in Canada. Skyfire Energy, who, as you heard, installed many of the systems that we talked about on the tour today and yesterday. The City of Calgary, who is working very hard to reduce greenhouse gases and reduce our carbon footprints with us and in our homes in Calgary. And the Solar Club, which is an association of a number of energy retailers who are offering the special high rate in the summertime, which when people have a fairly large solar array can actually help really significantly reduce their overall power bills on the year. So I want to thank everyone. Thank you to our homeowners. Thank you to our volunteers again today. And I want to make sure that you do not forget our other tour days. And look, I've accidentally left in June 13th. That's today. We've done that one. But we do have another tour day coming up next weekend on June 19th. We're going to do the first EcoSolar tour of Lethbridge homes, and that will be 5 homes on Saturday the 19th, and that again will start at noon. The link will be on our homepage on June 19th. Now, today's tour recording will be posted on our website soon. We're having a couple of editing issues on a couple of these very large 4 and 5 hour videos, but we'll have them up to the website probably within the next week or so. Remember, you could still send questions to info@ecosolar.ca. Gordon receives those questions, and we will either send them out to the homeowners to answer, or we'll answer them directly. So thanks again for attending today. We're going to stop the live streaming in a second, and I appreciate you all being on today and being part of the 2021 EcoSolar Home Tour.